Chapter 1, Sound. Xueqing is my teacher. She is 26 years old, has been married for a year, is very pretty, has a great figure, and often wears a red dress that hugs her hips to teach us. She has very good skin, fair and delicate, and very full breasts. When she walks, you can see the slight fluctuations, up and down, like waves. Especially her two long, snow-white, smooth legs wrapped in flesh-colored stockings. During class, she always paced back and forth in the classroom, which aroused my wild fantasies. At my age, I was just beginning to fall in love, and I longed for the body of the opposite sex. Xueqing became the object of my fantasies. But I knew it was impossible. She seemed so aloof, always with an expression of proud indifference when facing her classmates. But she was even meaner to me than to the others, and her eyes were full of contempt every time she looked at me. But what I didn't expect was that an accident would completely change the way I thought about her. That day, after evening study hall, I went alone to the playground to exercise on the parallel bars and horizontal bars. The playground is in the northwest corner of the school, next to a sports equipment area with parallel bars, horizontal bars, table tennis tables, rope climbing frames, etc., and further away is a basketball court with a concrete floor. I walked through the playground, and before I reached the parallel bars and horizontal bars, I heard indistinct voices coming from that area. "Oh no, not here, it's not good if someone finds out." The voice was very low, as if it were coming from the depths of the throat. It was a girl's voice, a little coy, and it sounded vaguely familiar to me, but I couldn't think of who it was. "Baby, it's fine, just once, it's so late, no one will find out." This voice sounded a little more worldly wise, much more calm and composed than the girl's voice, and it wasn't deliberately lowered, so I immediately recognized the owner of the voice. I was very surprised to hear a man's voice, because the voice was all too familiar. It was Lin Hai's head teacher, Xueqing. When it came to Xueqing, every student at Lin Hai knew him. There were three notorious people at Lin Hai: the principal, the head of internal affairs, and the head teacher. Among them, the director of education, Xueqing, is the worst. He likes to wander around the school campus when he's not busy. Whenever he sees some troublesome students causing trouble, he has to single them out and give them a lecture. If they dare to argue back, he'll call their parents directly. So those troublesome students would run away when they saw him. Although I'm not one of those troublesome students, I usually get poor grades and am notorious in the whole grade. And since I grew up in a poor family, Xueqing would show a look of contempt and disdain every time he saw me. Since I grew up with this kind of look, I didn't really care, so I didn't feel much about the head teacher. But unexpectedly, Xueqing actually appeared in the school playground in the middle of the night, with a girl. Because the street lamps in the playground were turned off at this time, and there was no moon that night, the whole campus looked dark. I could vaguely make out two dark shadows leaning against the edge of the table tennis table, hugging each other, but I couldn't see their faces. Usually I always heard that some student couples would take advantage of the night study period to skip class and hide on the playground to do something embarrassing, but I'd never seen it before. Now I didn't expect to actually run into it, and it was the school's dean of students. I'm already introverted and withdrawn this year, and I haven't even touched a girl's hand, so naturally I'm very yearning for things between men and women. Seeing the two of them, I immediately became excited, my heart pounding, guessing who the girl was and wanting to take a peek. But I was afraid that they might see me, so I quickly lay down on the grass next to the running track, holding my breath and watching their every move. The girl's voice was very exciting to my ears, and I could feel my body reacting. Unfortunately, it was too dark on the playground for me to see the girl's face or the expression on her face at the time, otherwise I would have been so excited that I would have lost control of my emotions. Even so, I already felt that I could no longer bear it. I was hot all over, the grass in the meadow was hurting my face, and the position of lying on my stomach was pressing against my body, which was reacting strongly, and it was very uncomfortable. The girl's voice started off a bit suppressed, as if she was biting her lip to make it come out, but as the voice of the woman teaching the main woman became more and more uncontrollable, the soft gasps had turned into low moans, and she was even humming in ecstasy. Hearing the girl's voice, I trembled all over, and my mind suddenly went blank. Chapter 2, Secrets. I finally heard clearly who was talking, and it was actually Xueqing, our English teacher, the woman I hated most. The reason I said she made me hate her is because although she usually seemed cold and aloof, she treated almost all the students in the class equally. Except for me, of course. Every time we had English class, she would call me and a few other students up to the blackboard to write words down. If other people couldn't write them down, she would just scold them a bit and make them copy them. But when I couldn't do it, she would take a feather duster and beat the palm of my hand hard, saying that I was the trash of the class, that I didn't deserve to go to high school at Lin Hai Middle School, and that I should go home and help my parents farm. She also called me a bad influence, ruining the whole class. I knew that she was deliberately picking on me because my family was poor and my grades were bad. Even so, I put up with it. But once, because I didn't memorize the words, she actually made me kneel on the ground in front of the whole class and whipped my face with a feather duster, leaving my face red and swollen with bruises. I couldn't hold back anymore, so I pushed her, and she fell to the ground without getting hurt, but she told the homeroom teacher about it. Because of this, I almost got expelled from school. It was only when my parents rushed to the school and knelt in front of Xueqing and the homeroom teacher begging them to give me a chance that I was able to stay in school and continue my studies. But after I returned home, I was beaten by my father with a whip, and the beating left my skin open and bleeding, and I couldn't get up from the bed for 2 weeks. From then on, I deeply hated my English teacher Xueqing. But I really couldn't have imagined that she, who was usually cold and aloof, with an air of superiority, and who had just gotten married last year, was now actually hiding in the playground having an affair with the director of instruction Xueqing. Hearing her moan with each thrust, I felt both excitement and anger. I don't know why I was angry, perhaps because although I hated her, I always thought she was a woman who was aloof and unattainable, and I would fantasize about her at night. But now she had become so cheap, and my heart was completely unprepared. Just as I was daydreaming, the sound stopped, and the two of them straightened up. I was startled, knowing that they had finished, and I hurriedly buried my face in the grass again, afraid of being seen by them. Then I heard a rustling sound coming from the air, as if the two were pulling up their pants and straightening their clothes. Then I saw two black shadows, one tall and one short, embracing each other and leaving from the other side of the basketball court, finally disappearing. I let out a long breath, immediately got up from the grass, and quickly rushed to the ping-pong table. I could smell a faint feminine fragrance, the same perfume Xueqing usually wears. Apart from that, there was also a faint scent of hormones in the air, but it became weaker and weaker as time passed. After confirming that it was Xueqing, I couldn't help but curse under my breath, "Bitch." But my heart also became much more active. "Xueqing, I'll let you hit me and curse me. When I next bump into your husband, I'll tell him about your affair and get him to divorce you." But as soon as this thought popped into my head, I rejected it. It would be too easy for her, no way. Suddenly, an evil thought came to me like a bolt from the blue, rushing into my head. This thought excited me, thrilled me, and made me even more nervous. I was going to use the fact that she had cheated on her husband to get her to cheat on hers with me. "Xueqing, you like to hit and scold me, so I'll punish your body to get back at you." That night, I returned to the dormitory, took a shower, changed my underwear, and then lay down on the bed to sleep. At that time, there were 8 people living in a dormitory, with 4 bunk beds, and I slept in the upper bunk of one of them. The other 7 people got along well, but I was excluded by them, and they basically didn't talk to me. Because my family was poor, I had suffered from the cold stares of students and teachers since I was young, so I developed an introverted personality. They looked down on me, and I didn't bother talking to them. After the lights went out, the 7 roommates chattered away, chatting quietly about the games they had played recently, which girls in the class were pretty, how to tell if a girl was a virgin, and they talked about everything. At first, I found all this very interesting, but after a while, I got tired of it. I usually fall asleep as soon as I close my eyes, but tonight I just couldn't sleep. All I could think about was Xueqing and Xueqing making love in the dark, and Xueqing's enchanting moans and cries. I was restless all night and only fell asleep in a daze at 1 or 2 in the morning. In the morning, when I went to attend morning study, I was in a very poor state of mind. I held my textbook upright on the desk and leaned behind the book to sleep. I don't know how long I slept for, but suddenly I felt a blow to the head, as if I had been hit by a book. The pain made me sit up immediately in surprise. Then I heard a burst of laughter, and I saw the boarding students around me all looking at me with a gloating expression. I saw in front of me, standing exactly Xueqing, her delicate and pretty face without the slightest expression of excess, her eyes flashing with anger, staring at me with my books in her hand. I guessed that she was the one who hit me on the head with my books, and she used a lot of strength. Even now, my scalp still aches faintly. "Lu Feng, you've got some nerve. You're the only one in the class sleeping during morning study. Do you not want to study anymore? If you don't want to study, get out of school. Just looking at you makes me angry." Xueqing glared at me and said coldly. Today, Xueqing was wearing her red dress that hugged her hips, showing off her slender figure and her 2 long, snow-white legs. She was full of temptation, and I could even smell the faint fragrance on her, the same fragrance I had smelled at the ping-pong table last night. I was a little impulsive. Looking at Xiao Xueqing's angry glare at me, I wanted to expose her shameful behavior on the spot, but I resisted. After all, there were still so many classmates in the class. If I revealed it, I estimated that not only would Xiao Xueqing's reputation be ruined, I would also offend the head teacher Huang Weiqiang and face the dilemma of being expelled from school. I could only grit my teeth, bow my head, and look at her smooth, pink, big white legs under her red, hip-hugging skirt without saying a word. Xiao Xueqing seemed to notice my gaze, and her anger grew even greater. Get out and stand there until the end of the first class, and don't go into the classroom. After Xiao Xueqing said that, I remembered that the first class this morning was English class. No wonder this woman came so early. But it would not be a short time for me to stand outside the classroom until the end of the first class. There was 40 minutes of morning study, followed by half an hour of breakfast time. After breakfast, there was another half hour of morning study and 10 minutes of recess time. Plus the first class is 45 minutes, which means I have to stand for at least 2 hours from now on. More importantly, since it's a punishment, it means I don't have time to go have breakfast. I've never seen Xiao Xueqing treat any student as harshly as she treats me. She's doing this on purpose to mess with me. Chapter 3, Threat. I immediately became angry and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm not going." But as soon as I said that, Xiao Xueqing grabbed my ear and pulled me hard towards the classroom door, cursing the whole time, "You piece of trash, you dare not listen to me? I'll show you if you dare disobey an order." I was a tall guy at 1.78 meters, but she pulled me so hard that I bent over, head down, and immediately followed her out of the classroom. When Xiao Xueqing let go, my ears burned with pain. I touched them with my hand and they were bleeding. This bitch. My eyes became gloomy and I glared at her fiercely. Seeing me glaring at her, Xiao Xueqing wasn't afraid at all, but instead laughed coldly, "Just stay here obediently. If you dare to leave here before the end of the first class, I'll call your family." Hearing this, anger burned within me instantly, and my face turned red, like ignited dynamite. I couldn't hold back any longer, and I yelled at Xiao Xueqing, "Who do you think you are to lecture me? I saw you having an affair with the head teacher on the school playground last night. You shameless woman, if you dare to call my family, I will tell them everything." My voice was a little hoarse and low with anger. Fortunately, the reading voices in the classroom during morning reading were very loud and I didn't hear what I said. Even so, when she heard this, Xiao Xueqing's face changed drastically. She looked around in a panic, and then leaned out the door to observe the students in the classroom. She found that there was nothing unusual, and she let out a sigh of relief. When her gaze returned to me, I could clearly feel the anger, shame, and panic in her eyes. "What are you talking about, Lu Feng? Don't talk nonsense." Xiao Xueqing's voice was low, her pretty face red, as she tried to refute. Seeing Xiao Xueqing's panic-stricken, exasperated look, the anger in my heart disappeared without a trace, and instead I felt an unprecedented thrill. "You had the guts to do it, but not the guts to admit it. I saw you doing it with the head teacher last night by the ping-pong table in the playground." I looked at Xiao Xueqing's red, pretty face and said coldly. This was the first time I felt so good since I started high school. I saw the panic and unease in Xiao Xueqing's eyes, along with a little shame and anger, and my heart became more and more excited and excited. "What do you want?" Xiao Xueqing's face turned from red to white, and she didn't dare to argue anymore, as if she was afraid that I would continue. "I want you to accompany me." Taking a deep breath, I felt my heart pounding. Before I could say this sentence, I couldn't imagine that I would have the courage to say it, but I did. After I finished speaking, my heart became even more nervous. I was afraid that Xiao Xueqing would break up with me because of this, throw in the towel, or adamantly deny the matter, and turn the tables on me. At that time, I would have no way to deal with her at all, and I might even be in danger of being fired. After I finished speaking, I stared at her pretty face. Her face was constantly changing color, sometimes green, sometimes red, sometimes white. I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest, so I quickly added, "If you don't want to, that's fine. I'll post the photos I took last night on the school's intranet, and let everyone know what a slut you are." Upon hearing this, Xiao Xueqing suddenly looked up, looking at me in disbelief. I felt hatred and despair in her eyes, as if she wanted to devour me alive. "Lu Feng, you're despicable." Xiao Xueqing gritted her teeth and cursed. I had never seen Xiao Xueqing look like this before. Perhaps it was because I hated her to the bone. The more she acted like this, the happier and more excited I became. "Do you agree or not?" I glared at her and asked again. "I promise, but after we're done, you have to hand over the photos and swear not to tell anyone about this." After a moment of hesitation, Xiao Xueqing finally said these words with hatred. When she said this, there was no longer the previous look of utter disgust on her face, but she still stared at me unfriendly. Hearing this, I was beyond excited. Xueqing had actually agreed to my request, which made me feel a sense of unreality, as if I were dreaming. Looking at Xueqing's graceful figure under her red skirt, her towering plumpness rising and falling with anger, and her rosy face, like two ripe red apples, and thinking of the beautiful sound she made last night, my body immediately responded. Almost without thinking at all, I desperately embraced her in my arms and one hand became unruly. I myself didn't expect that I would be so bold as to embrace Xueqing outside the morning reading classroom. It seemed that she was also completely taken by surprise, and her eyes revealed a shocked expression after she was caught off guard and embraced by me, and she hurriedly and panically tried to push me away. However, she was not as tall as me, and my strength was not comparable to that of an ordinary person. Not only was she unable to push me away, but she was instead embraced even more tightly by me. Helplessly, she could only protect her chest with all her might. Even so, she still could not stop my advances. Xueqing was tightly embraced in my arms. I could feel her soft and plump body tensing up tightly. Her clothes were all messed up by me, and when I touched her snow-white and smooth skin, the wonderful touch made me gasp heavily with excitement. Chapter 4, The Promise. Holding a girl in my arms for the first time, taking advantage of her, and still the female teacher who had always been aloof, made me very excited, and I couldn't help but increase the strength in my hands a little. Xueqing was so overwhelmed that she lost her strength and collapsed in my arms. Her pretty face turned even more rosy, and she tried her best to hold back, panting slightly, "Not here, we'll be done with class soon." Then after tonight's study hall, on the playground. I thought of the scene I saw last night and almost blurted it out. Xueqing lowered her head with a blush, as if she had also remembered the unsightly scene last night. In the end, Xueqing reluctantly agreed to me. When I returned to the classroom, I clearly remembered the vicious look she gave me, as if she wanted to eat me up. But I didn't care at all. After what Xueqing had done to me, why would I be polite to her? It was only when I returned to my seat that I noticed that all the other students in the classroom were looking at me with strange looks, probably mistaking me for disobeying Xueqing's order and returning to my seat before the time was up. My classmate was a girl with a cute oval face and round glasses like Harry Potter's. She was the class discipline committee member, called Wu Jia, with a ponytail, fair skin, and quite pretty, but like everyone else, her eyes were full of contempt when she looked at me. "Didn't the teacher tell you to wait until the end of the first period before returning to the classroom? Why are you back now?" Wu Jia was the teacher's model student, pretty, good grades, and liked to meddle in other people's business. Perhaps it was because she was tall, standing at 1.7 meters, that her homeroom teacher had paired her, the good student, with me, the worst student, as a desk partner. She was always meddling in other people's business. If I fell asleep in class, she would tap my hand with her book every now and then until I woke up, then give me a disdainful look and whisper, "Lufone, if you don't pay attention in class, I'll tell the homeroom teacher." If I threw rubbish on the floor, she would scold me for littering and tell me to pick it up. Or during an exam, if I glanced at her answer sheet with my eyes, she would cover it tightly with one hand and sometimes report to the teacher that I was copying. In short, Wu Jia was also a girl I really disliked. Hearing her ask me, I didn't bother to respond and continued to sleep with my head on the desk. It seemed that my indifference challenged her authority, and Wu Jia immediately pouted in anger, "When class is over, I'll go report to Teacher Xiao, and you just wait to be punished." If it were usual, hearing her say this would still scare me, but just now I told Xueqing about it outside the classroom, so not to mention her punishing me, I'm afraid she won't even have the face to come to class today. "Go ahead, I don't care." I didn't even look at her, smirking nonchalantly. "Fine, you just wait and see." Wu Jia froze for a moment, then ground her teeth and said, obviously not expecting me to be so bold today, which was a bit different from usual. Before long, morning study was over. I saw that after Wu Jia left the classroom, she really walked towards the teacher's office. Female lackey. I despise girls like her who love to tattle on others. Looking at her slender back, I couldn't help but curse, but I wasn't worried at all, and went directly to the cafeteria to get some food. After eating, I returned to the classroom, and most of the students in my class had already arrived. I saw Wu Jia holding her books and reading with her back to me. She looked like she was in a bad mood, so I couldn't help but tease her with a smile. "Did you report what happened to me to Teacher Xiao after class? She didn't say anything to punish me, did she?" Don't you get carried away." Wu Jia turned her face around, her beautiful eyes glaring at me fiercely for a moment, before she ignored me and continued reading her book. Seeing her flushed face, I felt quite pleased with myself. This was the first time I had won a complete victory in my confrontation with her. The rest of the day was spent in classes, and just as I had expected, Xueqing didn't show up for the first class, finding an excuse that she wasn't feeling well, and the class monitor supervised us during the self-study class. That day, I kept thinking about being able to do that thing with Xueqing after evening study. I was excited and overwhelmed. I thought about being able to say goodbye to my 17 years of virginity tonight. Where was the heart to listen to the class? After finally enduring the end of evening study, I hastily packed up my textbooks and stuffed them into the desk drawer, and then I couldn't wait to rush out of the classroom. Compared to last night, there was an extra moon in the sky tonight. The moonlight shone on the playground, and I could see the crystal clear water droplets on the grass, which looked very beautiful. But I had no heart to admire the moonlight. My heart was pounding, and I suppressed the excitement and nervousness in my heart. I went to the playground, but I didn't see Xueqing's shadow. I went to the horizontal bar and parallel bars by myself. I practiced on the parallel bars for a while, and then on the horizontal bars for a while. I was so tired that my shirt, which was inside my school uniform, was soaked with sweat. During the exercise, the erotic scene of Xueqing and the director of the teaching department together last night kept popping up in my mind. My heart was full of fantasies, and I couldn't help imagining the wonderful scene of Xueqing being naked under me and turning into joy. My heart was burning with passion, and I felt that my strength had increased a lot. However, after exercising for half an hour, I still hadn't seen Xueqing appear, and I couldn't help but start to feel a little anxious. This Xueqing won't stand me up and not come tonight, will she? If she dares not come, I will expose her shame tomorrow morning. I thought angrily in my heart, and immediately began to dial her phone number. But before I could dial, I saw a mature and graceful figure walking quietly towards me from afar, looking back from time to time, as if she were very nervous. Although I was far away and couldn't see her face clearly, her figure was indeed Xueqing. My mood suddenly became extremely excited. Before Xueqing came any closer, I could smell the gentle breeze she created as she walked. In the moonlight, I could clearly see the figure of Xueqing. As in the morning, she was wearing the same red form-fitting dress, which outlined her beautiful figure with a protruding bust and a curvy behind. Her plump breasts swayed with every step, and her pair of snow-white, slender legs wrapped in flesh-colored stockings under the hip-hugging skirt exuded a sexy and charming luster in the moonlight. I felt like I had an instant reaction, and I couldn't hold back anymore. I took a few steps forward and put my arms around her. She saw my figure as she was walking towards me, but it seemed that my actions were too hasty, so she couldn't adapt for a moment and almost screamed, but she finally couldn't hold back anymore. I was holding Xueqing in my arms, feeling her soft body tremble slightly. My heart grew more and more excited, and one hand began to act improperly, taking advantage of her as much as I could. No, don't. Xueqing's body was a little tense due to her nervousness, and her voice sounded a little rushed. Chapter 5, Impulsive. The more Xueqing did this, the more excited I became, taking advantage of her as much as I could. At first, Xueqing would symbolically resist a little, trying to push me away, but not too hard, as if she had prepared herself mentally before coming. After a while, it seemed that she had a feeling after being messed with by me, and she involuntarily collapsed in my arms, biting her red lips tightly, looking like she was enjoying it, but also a little uncomfortable. Although it was difficult to see her face in the moonlight, I think her originally fair skin must have been flushed. Xueqing's performance made my body react immediately. Although there was a thin layer of fabric between us, I could feel Xueqing's belly warm and smooth, without a hint of excess fat. Xueqing seemed to feel the difference too, and began to struggle again. The more she did, the more it aroused my desire to conquer her. I held her tightly, so that our skin was pressed against each other, so that she could no longer escape. For a moment, I felt an unprecedented excitement. I couldn't help but lower my head to kiss her sexy red lips with lipstick on. Maybe she was conquered by my strength, or maybe she was already mentally prepared and just put up a token resistance. When I kissed her red lips, Xueqing not only stopped resisting, but actively responded. What a cheap bitch, I cursed inwardly, but I also found it exciting. I was a virgin myself, so naturally I had no experience with this sort of thing, and the movements I used to kiss her were just what I had learned from those little movies from the island country. They were especially awkward, and I almost bit her lips a few times. However, Xueqing was very patient, and as a wife, she was very experienced in this area. Under her guidance, she and I successfully kissed. The feeling was wonderful, as if we were in a paradise, and I felt so comfortable that I almost floated away. Xiao Xueqing seemed to be really moved, her eyes began to become hazy, and her face showed two flushes. She was a little dissatisfied with the status quo and took the initiative to let me do her. This excitement made me feel like I couldn't hold back anymore. Just as I was about to take her, Xiao Xueqing, who had been so infatuated, suddenly woke up and desperately blocked my hands to prevent me from succeeding. "What are you doing?" I said anxiously, my voice sounding hoarse and my breathing heavy. If there was a mirror in front of me at this moment, I would definitely see how red my face was and how impatient I looked. But she was very determined, and I couldn't break it even if I used my hands. I asked, "Did you bring that?" Xiao Xueqing's voice was a little panting as well, and she stared at me and asked. Upon hearing this, I was dumbfounded. "Bring what?" "It's a safety measure." Seeing that I didn't understand, Xiao Xueqing expressed her meaning again in an obscure way. I finally understood what she was talking about, but I was still a virgin, so how could I possibly carry that kind of thing on my person? "Do I need to bring a condom?" I couldn't help but ask. "Of course. I'm ovulating, so I must take safety measures, otherwise it's not safe." Xiao Xueqing's voice was low, but it sounded very pleasant, unlike the usual sharpness when she scolded me. "This is just one time, it shouldn't be that accurate, and after this time we'll be even." Although I didn't know what ovulation meant, I could already guess from her expression. But the flame in my heart could not be extinguished so easily. It was unbearable to hold it inside, and I didn't care about anything else by now. "No." Xiao Xueqing's attitude was extremely firm. The blush on her face gradually faded, and she was completely sober. In her sober state, she looked a bit cold, not as fiery as before. She wanted to break free from me, but I quickly held her hand and said, "Let me do it for a while." "Can't I buy a condom tomorrow?" "Let's talk about it tomorrow after you buy a condom." Xiao Xueqing coldly pushed my hand away, and her usual cold and aloof demeanor returned. I suddenly felt like a deflated balloon. I had just finished straightening my clothes when I heard 3 sets of footsteps coming from afar, rustling on the grass. Judging from their figures, they seemed to be 3 boys, walking towards us. Xiao Xueqing and I were both startled. If they found out that we were doing this on the playground, the consequences would be unimaginable. I wanted to hide in the grass, but the moon was so bright tonight that even if I hid in the grass, they might still find us. I was so anxious that I didn't know what to do. "Let's hide under the ping-pong table." Xiao Xueqing was quick-witted and took my hand and led me to the ping-pong table not far away. We hurriedly crawled under the table, lying on the ground without daring to breathe. Our hearts were pounding, as if they were about to jump out of our chests. As soon as we had hidden, the sound of 3 people approaching got closer. They really did come here to exercise, and they started exercising in front of the parallel bars and horizontal bar not far from us. Xiao Xueqing and I glanced at each other. Fortunately, the moonlight couldn't reach here, and it was very dark, so it should be considered a relatively safe place. Here, I could not see Xiao Xueqing's expression either, but I could feel her heavy breathing, and it carried a warm fragrance that almost sprayed into my face. She was obviously very nervous too. She had just then grabbed my hand and hadn't let go until now. Her small, warm hand, which was slippery, was full of cold sweat. We both lay on the ground, not daring to move for fear of being discovered by the 3 boys. Fortunately, the 3 boys were practicing vigorously, sometimes practicing parallel bars, sometimes pull-ups, and they were very busy. I guess they didn't expect that there were 2 people hiding under the table at this time. After about 10 minutes, my heart gradually relaxed. I immediately felt that the position of lying down was very uncomfortable. The weeds under me itched and hurt, but I didn't dare to move, for fear of attracting the attention of the 3 of them. Looking at Xiao Xueqing again, it seemed that she was also in great discomfort. In the darkness, her slender waist drove her plump crotch to twist, and the outline of her body was like a water snake, extremely seductive. I was so close to her that I could smell the faint fragrance of a woman's body. With her careful movements, occasionally my hand would touch something, seemingly Xiao Xueqing's smooth and tender thighs. The trend of subsiding was once again strongly responding under inexplicable stimulation. I finally understood what it meant to be a man who thinks with his lower body. Even in this situation, I impulsively wanted to do that thing with Xiao Xueqing. I couldn't help but start acting up again with one hand, and I obviously felt Xiao Xueqing's body tremble a little. She seemed very nervous, so she quickly grabbed my hand hard, and her dark eyes flashed with a trace of anger as she glared at me. The more she did this, the more it aroused my desire. I couldn't help it anymore, and like before, I embraced her. Xiao Xueqing still tried to struggle, but I was much stronger than her, and I had already pushed her fingers away and continued to take advantage of her. I could clearly feel Xiao Xueqing tremble slightly, and her body, which had been tense from the tension, began to soften, and she involuntarily began to accommodate me. Her breathing seemed to become heavier in the darkness, and I looked up at her. Although it was dark, I could seem to feel her clenching her red lips, looking like she was in pain but also enjoying it. Who would have thought that in this pitch-black playground, just a few meters apart, 3 boys were exercising their bodies, while Xiao Xueqing and I were hiding under the table to do that, which was truly a thrilling and incredibly exciting experience. Xiao Xueqing couldn't hold back anymore and let out a strange whimper. The moment the sound came, the 3 boys who were exercising stopped moving. One of them, with a somewhat childish voice, said, "What was that sound?" It seemed to come from under the ping-pong table. Another one said, sounding a little nervous, "I'll go and take a look." Finally, a rougher voice came, accompanied by the sound of footsteps. Hearing the footsteps coming our way, Xiao Xueqing and I completely froze, like stone statues that had suddenly solidified. I could feel her body trembling violently, as if she were scared to the extreme. I wasn't much better. My heart was pounding, as if it had been lifted up to my throat. I was extremely nervous and suddenly came to my senses. I secretly regretted it. I was so infatuated with sex that I wanted to do it even under these circumstances. Chapter 6, Classmate. Xiao Xueqing and I almost saw a dark figure walk up to the ping-pong table. The person was wearing white Nike sneakers, which stood out in the darkness. Xiao Xueqing was so scared that she covered her mouth tightly and dared not make a sound. "Don't look, the janitor seems to be here." Just then, the same childish voice as before rang out again, with a hint of nervousness. Upon hearing this, the dark figure in front of us immediately walked quickly away, and then we heard 3 footsteps quickly retreating and fleeing into the distance, as well as an angry voice shouting, "You brats, if you're capable, don't run." A strong beam of light flickered a few times on the grass in front of us, and gradually faded away. I recognized the voice. It was the school janitor's voice. He occasionally patrolled the school grounds at night to see if any students were climbing over the wall to go out, and he happened to catch the 3 boys red-handed. I never had a good impression of the security guard before, but this time it sounded like music to my ears. It wasn't until there was no sound in my ears for a while that Xiao Xueqing and I could let out a sigh of relief. We both collapsed on the ground at the same time, and could hear each other breathing heavily. After a while, Xiao Xueqing seemed to have recovered her breath, pushed me away, and quickly crawled out. I secretly said to myself, that was a close call, and followed suit. But I didn't know that as soon as I had just crawled out from under the table, a slap hit my face hard. I almost fell over from the slap, but luckily I managed to hold onto the table. My ears were ringing, my face was burning, and after I had regained my balance, I saw Xiao Xueqing, with her clothes in disarray, glaring at me angrily and shouting, "Lufeng, you've gone too far just now." I felt a little remorseful about what I had just done, but after getting slapped, it only aroused my anger. I touched my still hot cheek and felt it swell up. I couldn't help but sneer, "Didn't you enjoy it just now? Now you're hitting me back. Do you think they can hear if you don't make a sound?" My words made Xiao Xueqing's face turn red and white. She glared at me fiercely, ignored me, and walked quickly towards the school gate. "Tomorrow, at this time, you and I will do it again, and I will definitely wear a condom." Seeing her about to leave, I remembered the main task at hand and hurriedly reminded her. Xiao Xueqing paused for a moment, but didn't turn around, and then quickly left. As I watched her graceful back disappear into the night, my heart burned with passion. Although I didn't get to do it with her tonight, I would have another chance tomorrow. I pulled up my pants, patted the dust off my body, and returned to the dormitory. The dormitory iron gate was closed, but fortunately the dormitory manager had already gone to bed, so I carefully climbed over the gate and entered the dormitory. That night I was again unable to sleep. It was as if there was a fire burning in my heart, and as a result I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and beat off. Because I had been unable to sleep for 2 consecutive days, inevitably, I dozed off again during morning study the next day. Fortunately, after a night's rest, my face had also gone down, otherwise if the teacher had seen it, I really wouldn't know how to explain it. My classmate Wu Jejia looked at me with a cold expression on her face, with a hint of contempt. It seemed that she was still angry about what happened yesterday, but I didn't care about her. Others may think of you as the class flower, but I don't care. I was lucky that morning. No teacher came during morning study, so I was able to sleep peacefully. However, when I was getting breakfast in the cafeteria that morning, I ran into Wu Jejia again. She was in line in front of me, with a girl at her side. She was not very tall, probably only 1.5 meters, with short haircut at the ears, a round face, quite cute, with a small red mouth and big eyes, and fair skin. She was also in our class, called Han Xiaomei. Her grades were quite good, and she was always in the top 10 in the class during exams. She also lived in the same dormitory as Wu Jia, so the two of them got along very well. However, unlike Wu Jia, she is not snobbish and likes to tattle on people. Instead, she is very polite to everyone, including me, so I have a good impression of her. However, the two of them basically never say anything to each other. Seeing that I was behind them in line, Han Xiaomei politely smiled at me. I felt a little embarrassed. Since I was an introvert, I had never talked to girls, let alone the boys at school. I could only awkwardly nod my head to say hello. There was a queue here, but suddenly a tall boy pushed his way in, directly in front of me. He looked about the same height as me, with flowing, disheveled hair and a tanned face. He didn't look very good looking, so he looked a bit fierce. Although I didn't know this boy, I knew that he was one of our grade 10 students, and he was in grade 10 class 5, which was next to ours, because sometimes I would meet him when I went to the toilet after class. Although I usually exercise at night, I have never fought before. Even if I accidentally get into a conflict, I just get scolded a little and that's it. Seeing him cut in line, I didn't dare say anything and could only wait patiently behind him. Unexpectedly, not only did he cut in line, he even looked back at me with a sneer and said, "Buddy, it's okay if I cut in line, right?" While talking, he shook his legs, looking a bit arrogant. I quickly shook my head and didn't say anything. It seemed that I heard the boy who cut in line talking. Wu Jia and Han Xiaomei both looked back at the boy who cut in line and me at the same time, and immediately understood what was going on. Wu Jia immediately pursed her lips and laughed. I had seen this smile many times before, a smile of complete contempt and ridicule, as if mocking my impotence. I was so angry, but I couldn't say anything in my defense. The tall boy who cut in line ignored me after that, standing in front of me and occasionally flirting with Wu Jia. Wu Jia was recognized as the class flower in our class. For such a beautiful girl, her reputation spread very early at the beginning of the semester, so the tall boy knew Wu Jia's name. It seemed that Wu Jia also knew the tall boy, and called him Li Weiqiao, but she acted like she didn't care. When Li Weiqiao spoke, she just nodded or shook her head slightly, with an expression of impatience. After they finished getting their meals, Wu Jia and Han Xiaomei quickly got rid of the tall boy's harassment and found an inconspicuous corner to sit down and eat breakfast. Unexpectedly, the tall boy still sat opposite them with a sheepish face, eating and laughing while he ate. I sat at a table not far from them. Usually, I always see Wu Jia looking fierce at people, like she likes to lecture people and tattle on them. She is so annoying. I never thought that at this moment, she looked like she was impatient but had to be patient. I laughed inwardly, thinking, Wu Jia, I never thought you would be afraid to argue back. When I laughed, the corner of Wu Jia's eye just glanced over to me. When she saw my gloating smile, she immediately became angry and glared at me with her big beautiful eyes. I wasn't going to be outdone, and I looked at her in return. There seemed to be an angry current passing between the two of them in the air. Wu Jia gritted her teeth and suddenly averted her gaze. I don't know if it was my illusion, but I saw a sly gleam in her eyes, and then she smiled at Li Weiqiao and said, "Li Weiqiao, are you trying to woo me?" Li Weiqiao was eating a fried dough stick and froze when he heard this. Then he suddenly looked delighted, probably not expecting Wu Jia to ask so directly. Yes, I like you." Li Weiqiao gulped down the fried dough stick in his mouth and nodded vigorously. "I really hate that boy. As long as you teach him a lesson for me, I'll agree to be your girlfriend," Wu Jia said with a smile, glancing over at me inadvertently. I was taken aback at this. "Wu Jia, I'm at least your classmate, and you actually want to beat me up." Li Weiqiao, however, looked particularly excited. After giving me a glance, he said to Wu Jia, "Okay, you said it. I'll teach him a lesson right away." After saying this, he got up and walked towards me. His eyes showed arrogance and disdain. Perhaps it was because I didn't dare say a word when he cut in line just now that gave him a strong sense of self-confidence. "Idiot, I'm sorry, but you've offended Wu Jia, which is the same as offending me. I'll teach you a good lesson on her behalf," Li Weiqiao said coldly as he walked up to me. Chapter 7, Outburst. I was quite scared when I faced Li Weiqiao's provocative words. Although I didn't know his name at first, I always saw him smoking with a few boys, including a boy named Wang Jun, when I went to the toilet after class. I knew Wang Jun because he was the leader of Class 5, Grade 10, and was quite good at fighting. Once I accidentally bumped into him on campus and saw him teaching some other students a lesson with a few boys, punching and kicking them, leaving the boy covered in blood. I was worried that Li Weichao was hanging out with Wang Jun, which was why they were often seen smoking together after class. I didn't offend her. "You can't hit me," I said quickly, my face red from nervousness. Perhaps I acted too cowardly, which immediately attracted Wu Jejia to cover her mouth and laugh lightly. "What a coward, usually I don't see how amazing you are, and I know you just argue with girls." Han Xiaomei next to her glanced at me, and with some reluctance whispered, "Jejia, no matter what Lu Feng says, he is still a classmate of ours, and your deskmate, so it's not very good to do this." Hearing Han Xiaomei's words, I was a little moved. I didn't expect Han Xiaomei to speak up for me, and at the same time, I hated Wu Jejia. Usually, I didn't argue with her, and at most I ignored her. If I had to say something serious, it would be yesterday when she went to Xueqing to report me. I guess she was upset that it didn't work, and when I added a few sarcastic comments, she took it personally. This girl is really a vindictive bitch. As I was thinking all kinds of things, Wu Jejia spoke again. "It's the same table that needs to teach him a lesson, so that he knows the consequences of angering me. Lu Feng, I'll give you a chance. If you apologize to me and say sorry, I won't let Li Weichao hit you again." Hearing this, I was furious. Not only did I hate Wu Jejia, but I don't think any other man would be able to apologize to a girl in front of so many people in the cafeteria, because it would be so embarrassing. "Wu Jejia, don't go too far. I can't hold back anymore," I shouted angrily. Hearing this, Li Weichao, who was standing in front of me, smiled happily and said, "Kid, I was really afraid that you would admit defeat and apologize, in which case I would not have the opportunity to date Wu Jejia. You did well, so let me teach you a good lesson." As soon as he finished speaking, a fierce look appeared on Li Weichao's face, and suddenly he kicked me. Although I exercise regularly, my reflexes could not keep up, and I was unable to dodge his sudden attack. I was kicked in the stomach and knocked into the table behind me, spilling half a bowl of kanji from the bowl and staining my clothes. Li Weichao's sudden move immediately attracted the attention of the entire cafeteria. I was kicked to the ground, covering my stomach, and then I heard the murmuring of the surrounding students in my ears. "Isn't that Li Weichao from grade 10 class 5? It seems like he's fighting again. He hangs out with Wang Jun. I heard that the boys in his class are all good at fighting." "Xiao, keep your voice down, it's not good if he hears you." The kick to my stomach wasn't that serious, but being surrounded by so many people, I felt like a monkey in a zoo. I felt so humiliated. I wanted to fight back, but I was too scared to do so. At that moment, I heard Wu Jejia's mocking laughter, which pierced my ears like a knife. I clenched my teeth and endured the humiliation and ridicule, but I didn't dare to stand up, for fear of being beaten again by Li Weichao. However, it seemed that he had no intention of just letting me go. He grabbed my hair and tried to drag me up from the floor. I gritted my teeth in pain and could only follow him up. He grabbed my hair and slammed my head against the stainless steel dining table. I felt a little dizzy and was only able to let go of his hand after a while. "Idiot, don't mess with my girlfriend in the future, or I'll beat you to death." Li Weichao's triumphant laughter was unceasing, accompanied by the murmurs of the people around him, mostly praising Li Weichao's prowess and saying that I was useless. None of this was the point. With a slight dizzy feeling in my head, I heard Wu Jejia's shrill laughter as she said, "Lu Feng, you really are a waste, just bullying girls. Now you're beaten and you don't even dare to let out a fart. I think you should quit school. Studying here is a disgrace to your parents." "Jejia, you're wrong. I reckon his parents are already useless, so what's there to be ashamed of? Otherwise, they wouldn't have given birth to such a useless son." This was followed by a flattering laugh from Li Weichao. Hearing this, I felt the blood in my body rush, and it immediately rushed to my head. It didn't matter that Wu Jejia was scolding me, and at worst I would grit my teeth and endure it. I could also endure getting a beating, but they actually insulted my parents, and no matter what, I can't forgive that. I didn't think about the consequences at all. My anger was like a beast that took over my mind. I grabbed a bowl from the table and turned around, slamming it into Li Weichao's face, who was laughing in triumph. The bowl still had a large portion of hot kanji in it, and when it was suddenly slammed into Li Weichao's face, he let out a painful scream and retreated, grabbing at his face with his hands, trying to clean the kanji off. But I didn't give him any time to catch his breath, and pounced on him immediately. I was about the same height as Li Weichao, and this angry pounce sent him tumbling to the ground. Then I went completely crazy, punching him as hard as I could, making him scream in pain and beg for mercy in a voice that almost sounded like he was crying. At the moment I pounced on Li Weichao and beat him up, I realized that I couldn't hear any of the sounds around me. They didn't seem to expect me to fight back, and it was so fierce and crazy. I even caught a glimpse of Wu Jejia in the corner of my eye, shocked, covering her mouth with her hand, her face full of disbelief, looking at me as if I were a stranger. Chapter 8, The Pharmacy. I don't know how many times I hit Li Weiqiao, but I remember in the end being pulled away by the other students in the cafeteria who had reacted. Afterwards, Li Weiqiao and I both went to the infirmary. Apart from a little redness on my forehead, I was almost unharmed. Compared to me, Li Weiqiao had it much worse. He was covered in bruises and redness, his face was a mess of blue and purple, and there was bruising around the corners of his mouth. The doctor in the infirmary examined Li Weiqiao's injuries and said to me, "Young man, you really went hard on him. Fortunately, it didn't hurt the bones, otherwise I'm afraid you'll be expelled." I was really shocked by the doctor's words. My parents are both honest farmers who can't read or write, and they just hope that I will study hard and get into university in the future. It's just that I don't study hard myself, and I have finally managed to get into the worst high school in the city. If I get expelled from school again, my father might beat me to death. Fortunately, Li Weiqiao's injuries were not very serious, and I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, when we were in the infirmary, Li Weiqiao kept his head down, as if he was scared by my beating and didn't dare to look at me at all. But I didn't expect that after we left the infirmary, I saw him turn around and scold me from afar, "You little brat, you wait and see. I'll get someone to beat you up illegally." I was so angry that I wanted to chase after him, but I didn't expect him to slip away faster than a mouse and disappear in no time. Seeing him in such a miserable state made me feel much better. I had never fought before, and I never thought that exercising would be so useful. When I returned to the classroom, I was called to the office by the homeroom teacher again. Our homeroom teacher was called Wu Gang, and he was also our Chinese teacher. He was tall and strong, and he always had a stern face. The unruly students in the class were all afraid of him. As long as he walked past, his classmates dared not make a sound. He already knew about the fight between Li Weiqiao and I in the cafeteria, and gave me a severe lecture. I kept my head down, not daring to say a word, but I couldn't stop thinking about the words Li Weiqiao had shouted at me when he left. After all, he hung out with Wang Jun, the class leader of 105, so he probably would find someone to beat me up. The more I thought about it, the more scared I became, to the point that I didn't hear a single word of my homeroom teacher's lecture. But this fear completely disappeared when Xueqing entered the office. I saw her plump, graceful, and charming figure, and couldn't help but think of what happened last night. My heart flared up again. It seemed that she sensed me looking at her, so Xueqing didn't dare to look at me, and walked back to her seat with her head down to prepare for class. The homeroom teacher was a reasonable person, and knew that I didn't start the fight. After scolding me, she finally gave me a serious warning and let me go back to class. At the classroom door, I saw Wu Jejia again. This was the culprit who got me beaten up by Li Weiqiao and reprimanded by the homeroom teacher. I wanted to rush up to her and slap her hard. But I couldn't help it. After all, she was a girl, and I didn't care to fight with a woman. Wu Jejia looked very pale and was keeping her head down, so she didn't even notice it was me when she passed by. I saw that she was walking towards the office, and I guessed that she was going to be scolded by the homeroom teacher. My heart suddenly became happy, and my original anger disappeared, and I felt an indescribable sense of relief. When I entered the classroom, I noticed that all the students in the class were looking at me with a strange look. It wasn't the previous kind of contemptuous look, and there seemed to be some awe in their eyes. One of the skinny students sitting in front of me even said, "Brother Feng, you're really awesome. You beat Li Weiqiao so badly." This skinny classmate was called Xueqing, and his grades were also at the bottom of the class. He was considered a bad student by the teachers, but our homeroom teacher was so awesome that he managed our class very strictly, so that class 5 was not chaotic. I was a little giddy from Xueqing's praise. Growing up, this was the first time I had ever heard someone praise me like that. It was such a good feeling that it suddenly made me feel that being good at fighting was also something to be proud of. While we were talking, Wu Jejia returned, her eyes a little red and her face still marked with tears. She almost ran all the way back to her seat, then leaned over the desk and buried her head between her arms, or I could hear her choking sobs. The other students looked at each other, wondering what had happened to Wu Jejia. I knew exactly what had happened. I was furious with her for what she had done today, but seeing her like this, all my anger disappeared. I guessed that Wu Jejia had been scolded by the homeroom teacher and cried, but it was a good scolding, and it made me feel good. The bell rang soon after, and the students returned to their seats. At this time, Wu Jejia wiped away her tears. She looked a little haggard, and she didn't even look at me as she prepared her books for the class. I was happy that she ignored me. I was pleased with myself for what I had done that day, and I felt smug about it the whole day, until Xiao Xueqing's appearance in the last class of the afternoon distracted me. Xiao Xueqing came into the classroom, and once again she looked cold and aloof. She didn't show any expression on her face when she looked at me, and for a moment I was given the illusion that nothing had happened between us. However, today Xiao Xueqing didn't write words on the blackboard for me to copy, which surprised the students. I was a little pleased inside, but when I looked at her beautiful body walking back and forth during the lecture, I felt a burst of passion in my heart. I thought about rushing out to buy a condom after school today for use tonight. After class, Xiao Xueqing left first thing. I quickly left the classroom too, not even bothering to eat dinner, and sneaked out of school with the group of day students. Unexpectedly, I saw Xiao Xueqing at the school gate. She didn't see me, carrying a beautiful white shoulder bag, with a sweet, gentle smile on her face, looking very virtuous, before crouching down and getting into a white Audi. From the window of the Audi, I saw the profile of a gentle young man wearing glasses, probably in his 30s. He had a smile on his face and was saying something, looking very happy. I knew that was her husband, who had just gotten married a year ago. He was rich and handsome, and I couldn't believe that Xiao Xueqing was still cheating on him. For a moment, my hatred for this woman increased a few more points. But there was no denying that her plump, mature body gave off an indescribable, irresistible charm. I felt my body react again, and I couldn't help but look forward to tonight's date. As I watched the Audi car drive away, I even thought wickedly, if her husband knew that Xiao Xueqing was not as gentle and virtuous as she appeared to be, not only had she cheated on him, but she had also messed around with a student in the playground at night, I guess he would definitely be so angry that he would kill Xiao Xueqing. Whistling, I entered a pharmacy in a happy mood. The condoms were placed prominently on the counter. After all, I was only a high school student, and it was the first time I had been to a pharmacy to buy condoms, so I was a little nervous. Moreover, the two clerks at the pharmacy were both aunties in their 30s, and I was too embarrassed to speak. One of the long-haired aunties in a white coat asked me what medicine I wanted to buy. I stammered for a long time, and in the end, my face turned red, but I still didn't say anything. I just stared at the condoms on the counter with those staring eyes. Seeing my eyes and expression, the long-haired aunt seemed to guess what I wanted, and said with a smile, "Are you here to buy condoms?" I nodded hesitantly and gave a soft "hmm." Fortunately, the long-haired aunt did not make fun of me because of my embarrassment. She just smiled slightly and brought a box of condoms over to me and handed them to me. I felt that although the long-haired aunt was only a little younger than my mother, she was quite pretty. Her pair of snow-white, smooth legs under the white coat were very attractive, which made me like her a lot. However, her next sentence completely lowered my head and her face became very ugly. 35 yuan per box, take it. Although the long-haired aunt had a very nice voice and a nice smile, I was extremely embarrassed and wished I could find a hole to burrow into. My family was poor, and usually, when I went back home every weekend, my mother would give me 120 yuan for food. The cost of food at school was almost 20 yuan a day. Although it was only Thursday, only 4 days had passed, but I had also bought 2 pens and a notebook this week, and now I only had 25 yuan in my pocket. And that 25 yuan was still my food money for tomorrow and the fare for the bus ride back. Chapter 9, Getting on the Bus. I originally thought that a box of condoms would cost no more than 10 yuan at most. Tomorrow, I could just skip breakfast and eat instant noodles for lunch, and I would be able to get by. Little did I know that a box of condoms would be so expensive. I forgot to bring money, so I'm not buying it. When I said this, I felt like my face was burning. It was already embarrassing enough for someone my age to buy condoms, and in the end, I didn't even have the money to buy them. After saying this, I didn't care how the two aunts looked at me. I immediately turned around and ran out as fast as I could, as embarrassed as I could be. I ran far away. I was so tired and out of breath that I stopped, and I looked back guiltily, afraid that the two aunts would come out and stand in front of the shop and laugh at me. Fortunately, I didn't see the two pharmacy aunts, and my heart finally slowly calmed down. But then came a feeling of great frustration. I hadn't been able to buy any condoms, so how was I going to do it with Xiao Xueqing that night? As a result, I was in a rather depressed mood during evening study hall, and couldn't muster up any energy. When evening study hall was over and the students left the classroom one by one, I slowly packed up my textbooks. I felt a little unwilling, and when I thought about Xiao Xueqing's plump and seductive body, my heart burned with passion. In the end, I decided to go to the playground, even if it was just to touch Xiao Xueqing's body. My heart became active again, and after finishing packing, I hurriedly ran out of the teaching building. When I arrived at the playground, I saw Xiao Xueqing's figure again. I became excited inside and hurriedly ran over to her and embraced her. Holding Xiao Xueqing's soft and plump body, I involuntarily got an erection again and couldn't help reaching up to her plump and towering peaks. Xiao Xueqing stopped me, however, and said shyly, "It's too dangerous here, let's go somewhere else." "Where?" I subconsciously stopped moving. Xiao Xueqing didn't say anything, let go of my hand, and then walked straight in a certain direction. I was very puzzled, so I suppressed the evil fire in my heart for the time being and quickly followed her. What I didn't expect was that she actually took me to her car, the white Audi her husband drove during the day. When she told me to get in, Xiao Xueqing was afraid that I would be seen by someone from school, so she said, "Hurry up, get in the back seat, don't let anyone see you." There were actually not many cars in the carport, and there was no one around, so it seemed relatively safe. But I still obeyed Xiao Xueqing's words and quickly got into the back seat. Xiao Xueqing also got in the car and started the car. She actually took me out of the school. I sat in the back seat, my heart pounding, not knowing where Xiao Xueqing was taking me, but I was very excited about what was about to happen. I could even smell a faint, sweet fragrance filling the car, the scent of Xiao Xueqing. "Teacher Xiao, where are you taking me?" I couldn't help but ask the question that was on my mind as soon as we left the school. Xiao Xueqing didn't say anything, but instead drove about a kilometer outside the school grounds. It was a forest area, with a winding path running through it, and usually very few people pass through here, let alone in a car. Xiao Xueqing pulled over to the side of the path and turned to me and said, "Let's do it here." After saying that, she got out of the driver's seat. I thought we were going to do it, and I was about to open the door and get out, but then I saw her sneak back in through the back door. "We can do it in the car, don't get out," Xiao Xueqing said, her tone a little cold. She gave me a cold look and added, "Hurry up, my husband is still at home waiting for me." Seeing Xiao Xueqing's cold attitude, the anger in my heart was aroused, but this anger was immediately transformed into evil fire. I immediately embraced her and kissed her cheek. She showed an expression of disgust and tilted her face to one side to avoid my kiss. So I kissed her earlobe. Xiao Xueqing's earlobes were crystal clear, plump and round, and very beautiful. Not only that, but one of my hands began to get naughty. Xiao Xueqing was wearing a black OL professional outfit today, with a fitted white shirt underneath. She looked very dignified during class, with an air of subtle nobility. But I'm afraid no one would have thought that such a noble and refined female teacher would actually be toyed with so casually by her student in the car. The delicate and smooth skin felt wonderful, and it made me react immediately, continuing to do bad things. Xiao Xueqing seemed to have a reaction to what I did. Her face began to turn red, her eyes became confused, and she let out a soft moan. Xiao Xueqing's panting greatly stimulated my nerves, so I went to kiss her cheek again. This time, she didn't resist, but instead actively responded by kissing me. After a while, Xiao Xueqing seemed unable to take it anymore, and she collapsed in my arms, panting slightly and saying with a faint aroma, "Did you buy a condom? Take it out." Chapter 10, Revenge. Xiao Xueqing's question made me freeze for a moment, and I suddenly came back to earth from my previous high of passion. "A box of condoms costs 35 yuan, how can I afford it?" But I was too embarrassed to tell Xiao Xueqing, so I could only reply, "I forgot." "Forgot?" Xiao Xueqing's face flushed immediately, and she pushed me away with a hint of displeasure in her eyes. She then straightened her clothes, sat up, and said coldly, "You wanted to do it with me, so how could you forget?" I was incredibly embarrassed and lowered my head, not knowing how to explain. Seeing my appearance, she suddenly sneered, "Lu Feng, can't you afford condoms?" "Who said I couldn't afford them? I just forgot." Xiao Xueqing's mocking tone made me feel uncomfortable. I didn't want her to look down on me, so I said with a stiff upper lip, "If you forgot, that's fine." Xiao Xueqing didn't pursue why I hadn't bought a condom, and then said in a cold tone, "Lu Feng, I've already given you 2 chances, but you didn't take advantage of them. I've kept my promise by playing with you twice, and you have to promise what you said, delete the photos on your phone, and never mention anything about me in front of anyone again." Xiao Xueqing spoke in a very strong tone, and crossed her arms as if she had returned to her usual image of an icy, proud, and domineering female teacher. I was of course unhappy that I had not succeeded with her twice because of the condom. "No, I must have sex with you once before I can do what you say," I retorted quickly. Xiao Xueqing looked at me for a long time, her eyes flashing with cold light, making me feel a little intimidated, and I subconsciously avoided her gaze. After all, she is an adult, has a wonderful family, and naturally has much more social experience than I, a high school freshman. Until now, I was worried that she would turn against me if we disagreed. Fortunately, my worries were unnecessary. She said with a cold face, "Okay, then you must keep your word. Just once, you must keep your promise after you do it." I immediately nodded and said, "Okay. Okay, get off the bus. It's less than 10 minutes from here to the school, so just walk back along this road." Xueqing was sure of my intentions and didn't want to stay with me any longer, so she wanted to get rid of me. "Then let's do it on Monday." I knew it was Friday tomorrow, and I had to go home, so I rescheduled it for Monday. Xueqing thought for a moment and said, "I can't do it on Monday, I have something going on in the evening. How about this, you come to my house on Saturday afternoon, my husband will be away for a meeting, so we won't be disturbed." Hearing Xueqing invite me to her house, although there was a coercive and coerced relationship between the two of us, it still made me very happy, and I immediately nodded and said yes. After confirming the specific time and place, my mood began to become pleasant again. Although this time I didn't succeed, I still have next time. I was very happy to think that I could still touch Xueqing's body like this on Saturday afternoon. Just now, she asked me to get off the car, and I didn't feel comfortable staying in the car any longer, so I immediately opened the door and got off. Who knew that as soon as I got off, Xueqing stopped me again. I looked at her with some confusion, not knowing what she wanted. "Do you know where I live?" Xueqing asked calmly. Upon hearing this, I was dumbfounded. Yes, I still don't know where Xueqing lives, so how am I going to get there? Xueqing's words left me confused, and I froze in place without saying a word. Unexpectedly, Xueqing burst out laughing, seemingly finding my expression silly, or something else. Anyway, I couldn't tell. I just felt that her laugh was really beautiful, and my dislike for her involuntarily diminished a lot. It seemed that she was aware of her inappropriate behavior, and immediately after she laughed, she suppressed it and put on an icy face again, saying, "My home is at 201, Unit 3, Building 4, Jiahong Community, Lianhua Road. Remember it." I repeated what Xueqing had said in my mouth, memorized it in my heart, and nodded. Seeing that I had remembered, Xueqing ignored me, returned to the driver's seat, backed up, passed by me, got back on the road, and gradually disappeared into the night. I watched the departing shadow of the car, and I felt inexplicably reluctant to let it go. But I quickly adjusted my mood and walked towards the school. When I returned to the dormitory, it was close to midnight. A few of my dormitory mates were still awake. When they saw me come in, the one sleeping in the bottom bunk near the door asked, "Lu Feng, where have you been? Why did you just get back now?" The one who asked me was called Ma Lin. He was thin and tall, his academic performance was not good, but he was very good at playing basketball. Because of his build, the dorm mates and classmates gave him the nickname Monkey. After Monkey finished talking, I heard a chubby roommate in the upper bunk bed say, "Brother Feng, you don't know." After the dormitory lights went out, Xiao came to the dormitory with 3 or 4 of his classmates looking for you. When they saw you weren't there, they asked us where you went, and we said we didn't know. He told us to let you know that you're dead tomorrow. The short and stocky student is called Xueqing. His family is well off, and he wears designer clothes all over. His parents give him 500 yuan a week for pocket money, which he can't spend fast enough. His grades are okay, he's in the middle of the class, and he's quite generous, often treating his roommates to meals and internet access. Of course, since my family is poor and I'm a loner, he normally looks down on me and naturally has never treated me to a meal or internet access. Usually, my roommates don't even bother to talk to me, let alone pass on a message for Xiao. Perhaps the fight in the cafeteria today made them realize that I'm not as useless as I seem, and they were more enthusiastic towards me. However, Xueqing's words suddenly made me feel cold from head to toe. I don't have any friends at school, and I've never been in a fight before. The reason I was able to defeat Xiao in the cafeteria this morning was partly because of my sudden attack, and partly because of my determination and regular exercise. If he really brought a few students to beat me up tomorrow, I really wouldn't know how to deal with it. So I spent the night in a state of tension and anxiety. In the morning, after brushing my teeth and washing my face, I quickly sneaked out of the dormitory, faster than usual by more than 2 or 3 times. Of course, I was still mainly worried about Xiao bringing people to beat me up. That day, everyone in the class was very happy because it was the weekend again, and everyone's faces were full of smiles, but only I was constantly panicking and feeling uneasy in my heart. I almost endured the whole day with difficulty, and even in Xueqing's class, I no longer focused on her attractive body. Fortunately, I got through the day safely. As I watched, school was about to let out, and my heart gradually relaxed. I began to think that Li Weichao probably just scared me yesterday and didn't dare to do anything to me. However, when school let out, I still felt a vague sense of unease. I was afraid that Li Weichao might be waiting for me at the school gate. Sure enough, as soon as I left the school gate, I saw Li Weichao. He was smoking a cigarette and chatting with 3 of his classmates, but I didn't see their leader, Wang Jun. As soon as I saw the 4 of them, my face immediately changed. I quickly lowered my head and hid behind the other students leaving the school, trying to muddle through. Unexpectedly, Li Weichao spotted me at a glance and yelled at me, "You little punk, stop right there." Chapter 11, The Savior. Li Weichao's yelling scared me so much that I turned white. Yesterday morning in the cafeteria, I hit him so hard, and now he wants to get back at me. If I get caught, I'll probably get a good beating. I can fight Li Weichao alone, but I'm no match for the 4 of them. I know I can't fight back, so I just run. I can hear their shouting from behind me. I dare not turn around, knowing that they will definitely teach me a lesson today. I know they must have caught up with me, so I grit my teeth and run as fast as I can. Our chase and flight immediately became a scene at the school gate. But we had already gone a distance beyond the school gate, and the janitor couldn't do anything about it. Besides, fighting outside school was not within his jurisdiction. The other students were just watching the fun, too, and they were afraid to get involved. I usually exercise, so I'm not bad in terms of physical strength, but my speed was much worse. All I could hear was Li Weichao's yelling and cursing getting closer and closer. "Idiot, if you're so good, don't let me catch you, or I'll break your legs." Although I knew in my heart that he was just bluffing, I was still scared to death. I almost gave it my all, sprinting even faster than I normally did during the 100-meter dash in gym class. I ran for about 500 to 600 meters, and they kept up with me the whole time. My lungs were about to explode, and I couldn't catch my breath. I felt like I couldn't take it anymore, and my speed dropped quite a bit. Just then, I saw a small pink electric car parked by the roadside ahead. A familiar petite figure was sitting in the car, seemingly texting with her head down. I knew that back too well. It was Wu Zhejia's best friend Han Xiaomei. She had greeted me politely in the cafeteria yesterday morning, and I had a good impression of her. At this moment, I didn't care about that anymore. Seeing her riding an electric car, a glimmer of hope suddenly ignited in my heart, and I quickly called out her name. Han Xiaomei turned around and saw it was me. She was about to smile at me, but then her face suddenly turned ugly when she saw Li Weichao and the others chasing after me. I felt a glimmer of hope, as if strength was surging back into my body. The speed that had dropped suddenly picked up again, and with sheer determination, I finally rushed to Han Xiaomei's side. Without saying a word, I jumped onto the back seat of her scooter and asked her to take me away. Han Xiaomei probably knew that if I was caught, I would be beaten up, so she immediately twisted the accelerator and started the car. The small electric car rushed out in an instant. Despite its small size, the electric car had quite a lot of horsepower and zoomed off into the distance. At this point, I couldn't help but turn around to look back. I saw that Li Weichao and the others seemed to have given up and were leaning far away from me with their hands on their knees, cursing, "Damn you, you just wait, next time I'll get you." Although I was exhausted and panting like a cow at this point, I felt a sense of satisfaction when I saw their exhausted, resentful and helpless appearance. "Idiot, if you've got the guts, come after me." I couldn't help but yell. While I was talking, the car drove a little further, and I could still see Li Weichao and the others yelling and cursing, but I couldn't hear what they were saying anymore. I then turned back to them again and ignored them. "Thank you." Han Xiaomei was practically my savior, and I immediately thanked her. "They didn't chase after us, did they? I was so scared just now." Han Xiaomei didn't turn around, but spoke to me while driving. Although she seemed petite, the electric bicycle she was riding was very stable with the 2 of us on it, and she was obviously very skilled at riding it. Sitting on Han Xiaomei's electric bicycle, I suddenly felt a little envious. If I had an electric bicycle, I could go back every day and wouldn't have to live in the dormitory. But I know that my family is poor and can't afford it. When the semester started, my father bought me a cell phone, but he had to sell several hundred kilograms of rice to get the money. But Han Xiaomei's electric bicycle was very small, and my body was almost sitting against her crotch. When I was sitting just now, I was too embarrassed to put my arm around her, so I grabbed the sides of the toolbox on the back of the electric bicycle. Even so, I could still feel the wonderful touch of the soft elasticity of her body. She also had a unique feminine fragrance, and her long hair blowing in the wind was like a hand stroking my cheek, tickling but very pleasant. The soft strands of hair carried a hint of fragrance that was mesmerizing. I was a big boy in puberty, and besides, I had been stimulated in that area for the past few days. I could no longer control my physical contact with a member of the opposite sex, and I immediately got a reaction. What's stopping me? Han Xiaomei sensed it, but she didn't seem to know what it was, and she wanted to free up a hand to feel behind her. Chapter 12, Action. Han Xiaomei's actions startled me. It was really embarrassing. Fortunately, Han Xiaomei didn't look back, or I would really hate to find a hole to burrow into. It's the phone in my pocket, I'll put it in a different place. I quickly found an excuse to explain, then reached into my pants with my hand to support it, and subconsciously shifted my body forcefully back, trying not to let my body's reaction touch her. She didn't take it seriously either, and then asked where my home was, and I answered honestly. She laughed after hearing it. It happens to be on the way, I can take you to the front door of my home, there is a stop sign in front of my home, and you can take the bus directly back then. I asked her where she lives, and she turned out to live in a small community on the edge of the city. It really was the same way as me, and I didn't expect it to be quite so coincidental. After about 20 minutes, she parked the car in front of a community called Maple Leaf, saying that she had arrived. Then she pointed to the bus stop sign on the side of the road and said, "Look, there should be a bus to your house." I said thank you again, and then she said goodbye to me and waved to me. Usually, I don't see Han Xiaomei talking much to other students. I thought she was just as introverted as me, but I was surprised to see her today and change my mind a lot. She is quite friendly and cheerful. I watched her as she wheeled her cart into the residential area and disappeared from view, before following her instructions and looking for the bus stop. However, I noticed a machine at the entrance to Han Xiaomei's residential area. I had seen this machine before on TV. You put in a coin and it gives you a condom. Xueqing and I need to use condoms, and we missed out on them last night. I was so excited to find a machine selling condoms here today, and all I had to do was put in a coin. I felt in my pocket and was lucky to have 3 coins left, which I had saved by skipping breakfast. I walked slowly over, and when I got close to the machine, I looked around suspiciously, as if I were a thief. When I saw that no one was looking at me, I quickly took out a coin and put it in. A condom immediately fell out of the machine, which I quickly picked up and put in my pocket like a treasure. But then I thought, one doesn't seem to be enough, so I immediately put another coin in, and then another condom fell out. I was so happy to have 2 condoms in my pocket, and I knew I would get what I wanted tomorrow. Then I followed Han Xiaomei's instructions and found the bus stop sign by the roadside. The sign indicated several buses, and sure enough, one of them passed by my house. I waited at the bus stop for a few minutes, and soon the bus I wanted came. Because my home is in the countryside, there is still some distance from here to my home, but it is not far. Usually it costs 5 yuan to take a bus home from school, but today it only cost 2 yuan, so I was quite happy. I can save the rest of the money and wait until my mom gives me 120 yuan tomorrow, then I can buy a box of condoms first. It was already 5:30 p.m. when I got home. My mother was washing rice. She beamed with joy when she saw me and told me to take a shower and wait for my father to come home before dinner. I knew my father had not yet returned from the farm, so I took a shower as my mother instructed and then went to my room to change into some clean clothes. Lying on my own bed, I felt comfortable at home even though the bed was very hard. Unconsciously, I remembered the scene just now with Han Xiaomei sitting on the small electric car with her body pressed against mine, and then I thought of Xueqing's plump and seductive body. Han Xiaomei is petite and looks immature, but Xueqing is fully developed and mature body, exuding a charming and plump charm that is indescribably seductive to a teenager my age. The thought that I can do that with Xueqing tomorrow afternoon made my heart unstable again. I finally made it to noon the next day. After eating lunch, I lied to my mother and said I was going to hang out with my classmates, and I wouldn't be back until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. She gave me a doubtful look, probably wondering why I wanted to hang out with my classmates on a weekend when I usually stayed at home. I didn't care what she was thinking, and I didn't care about anything else either. I had 2 condoms in my pocket since last night, and I made sure to check that I hadn't forgotten any before I left. I took the bus to the city center, then transferred to another bus, and finally arrived at the Jiahong residential area on Lianhua Road. It was only 12:30 p.m., but I was itching to get started, so I stood at the entrance to the residential area and sent Xueqing a text message saying that I had arrived. After sending the text message, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Although Xueqing had given us her mobile phone number on the first day of school, I had never sent her a text message before, and I didn't know if she would reply. Fortunately, after a while she did reply, but the content of the message disappointed me a little. You can come back at 2 p.m., he's still at home. Of course I knew that she meant her husband, but I couldn't wait until 2 p.m. I wanted to go to an internet cafe nearby to go online for a while, but after feeling in my pocket, apart from the few dollars I had saved up from eating frugally every day, which I still used for the bus fare, I didn't have any spare money to go online. With no choice, I had to find a big tree by the roadside and sit down, leaning against it and waiting for the slow passage of time. It was about 1:30 when I almost fell asleep leaning against the tree, and the vibration of my phone woke me up. It was a message from Xueqing. He's gone, you can come up. On seeing this message, I was so excited that I wanted to jump up, sweeping away the drowsiness I had felt just now. My body was like it had been pumped full of adrenaline, and I couldn't wait to rush into the community. I found the building unit where her house was located, went up to the second floor, and after confirming that it was her house, I excitedly rang the doorbell. After 10 seconds, the door opened, and I saw the woman who made me so excited and fascinated. I saw Xueqing standing behind the door wearing a purple silk nightgown. The nightgown brought out her plump and slender figure to the fullest, her chest was round and full, and her two smooth and round long legs under the nightgown were full of infinite temptation. Usually, I see Xueqing either in OL business attire or that red hip hugging skirt, and I've never seen her dress so casually. And this seemingly casual attire is even more heart-stopping than her usual formal wear. For a moment, my heart was pounding with excitement, and I couldn't help myself. She saw that I didn't say much, and just said in a lazy tone, "Come in." Then she turned around and walked into the house on her own. Chapter 13, Doorbell. I watched Xueqing walk with her pretty buttocks shifting into alluring shapes under her nightie, and I couldn't help swallowing. I hurriedly followed her. Once inside Xueqing's home, I was shocked by the environment. The spacious and bright living room was fully furnished with appliances. A brown leather sofa was in the center of the room, and a 60-inch LCD TV was on the opposite wall. A door to the east leads to the balcony, where sunlight shines in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. There are all kinds of flowers on the balcony, and I can even smell the faint fragrance of flowers drifting from the balcony. This house is at least 150 square meters, and it is so luxuriously decorated. I thought again about my broken-down house, and a deep sense of inferiority arose in my heart. What are you doing? Hurry up and take a shower. My husband will be back at 4 p.m. Xueqing rolled her eyes and said coldly when she saw me in a daze. Taking a shower? I was pulled back by her words and said a little embarrassed. After all, it is in such a luxurious house that I take a shower, and the key is still Xueqing's home. I usually don't dare to think about it, but today she actually took the initiative to let me take a shower. If you don't want to take a bath, don't even think about touching me. Xueqing thought I didn't want to take a bath, and her face turned even colder. She couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, "What a dirty thing." This was obviously directed at me. The little bit of embarrassment I had felt inside vanished, and I was filled with anger instead. I wanted to hold her in my arms and punish her properly, but I thought there would be plenty of time for that later, so I held back and didn't speak to her again. I turned around and went into the bathroom. In the bathroom, I saw Xueqing's lingerie sitting next to the bathtub. It was all made of lace, and the panties even had a hollowed-out design, which made them look very sexy. I guessed that she had thrown them there after taking a bath before, and my body reacted unconsciously. I quickly averted my eyes, turned on the shower, and after a quick shower, I went out wearing only a pair of large underpants and carrying my own clothes. At this time, Xueqing was no longer in the living room. Her house had 3 bedrooms and 1 living room, 2 of which were closed, and only the door of one room was ajar. It seemed that she heard my footsteps, and a somewhat lazy voice came from the room, "Come in, the door is not closed." Hearing this, I was extremely excited. I had been thinking about Xueqing's body for several days, and the previous few times I had ruined it because I didn't use a condom. This time, I would be able to get what I wanted immediately, so how could I calm down? Without a second thought, I rushed into Xueqing's room and locked the door behind me. When I turned around, I was stunned. I saw Xueqing sitting on the wide Simmons bed, one leg bent and the other straight, her fair, smooth skin exuding a charming luster. She was applying skin cream to her legs to make her skin appear even more delicate and tender. She was doing this right in front of me, and when she bent over to apply the cream, the color of her nightdress revealed 2 snow-white pieces, and I could even see the deep ravine in fullness inside. At this moment, Xueqing raised her head and saw me standing stupidly, with a strong reaction in my large underpants. She couldn't help but show a hint of disdain and contempt, saying, "Isn't it just that you want my body? Hurry up, don't dawdle, and when it's over, we won't owe each other anything." Her tone was full of unspeakable disgust and impatience, but I no longer cared. Xueqing's seductive body had completely ignited the fire in my heart. I threw the laundry in my hands directly, pounced to the side of the bed, and embraced Xueqing in my arms. With the previous two encounters, she struggled less this time, only symbolically resisting a few times before letting me do whatever I wanted. My hands were unruly, and she reacted to them. A blush appeared on her originally pale and pretty face, and she bit her lips slightly. Her eyes also became unfocused. She even began to breathe softly, and her voice sounded extra stimulating in my ears. Who would have thought that the usually aloof and cold female teacher, who was always on high ground, would actually moan softly in my arms at this time, just like a silver doll becoming a woman? It was truly unbelievable. Not only that, but after a while, she seemed unable to bear it anymore, and her slender, long fingers even took the initiative to help me. After less than 2 minutes, I couldn't hold back anymore, and quickly asked her to stop, or else she would probably laugh at me if I came like that. "I'll put on a condom first," I said, panting heavily. She gave a soft and it seemed that she was also a little infatuated. She lay on her side on the bed, curled up, looking incredibly seductive. I got up and picked up my pants on the floor, took out the condom from my pocket, and deliberately slowed down my movements, actually delaying the excitement I had just felt. I took 5 whole minutes, and she was clearly getting impatient. She stopped what she was doing, the blush on her face subsided slightly, and she gave me a glare and said, "Why aren't you done yet? Are you doing this on purpose to tease me?" "Right away, right away." Seeing that she was angry, I didn't dare to dilly-dally anymore. After I was done, I got back into bed. She gave me a look, and I seemed to see a hint of expectation in her eyes. What a cheap woman. Although I cursed her in my heart, I felt very excited and pleased. I really didn't expect that Xueqing, my English teacher, who seemed to particularly dislike me, would also need me at times. I no longer hesitated, and was about to get down to business when, just then, the doorbell rang outside. The sound was not very loud, as there were 2 doors between them, but we both sat bolt upright as if we had been struck by lightning. I could see a hint of panic in Xueqing's eyes, and I think I must have looked similar. As we looked at each other, the doorbell rang again, several times in quick succession, and I could hear someone shouting outside the door. "Xueqing, open the door. I've forgotten my keys." To be honest, I didn't know who the voice belonged to, but I could tell from Xueqing's instantly pale face and her look of panic and confusion. The person shouting at the door said he didn't have his keys. Could it be his husband? She didn't say her husband went to a meeting at the company. Why did he suddenly come back at this time? As soon as I thought of this, I felt my hair stand on end. If her husband found out that I was cheating on him in his bed with his wife, I don't know if Xueqing would be in trouble, but I think I would definitely be chopped up by him with a knife. Chapter 14, Thrilling. Hurry, hide inside the closet. Xueqing was also very scared, but she remained relatively calm. She gave me a push, and then hurriedly straightened her clothes. I don't know how I managed to hide in the closet. It wasn't until Xueqing had finished straightening her clothes, kicked my clothes under the bed, and then walked out with a slightly calmer demeanor that I came to my senses. Hiding in the dark closet, my heart was about to jump out of my chest. At that time, my mind was blank, and the only thought was that I must not let her husband find out, or I would really be dead. Then I heard the sound of the door opening outside and Xueqing talking. "Why are you back? Didn't you say there was a meeting at the company?" "I just drove to the bottom of the company, and he actually called to say the meeting was cancelled at the last minute." "Do you think the boss is playing with me?" The voice of a man sounding a little dissatisfied. "Xueqing, what are you doing at home? I just called you for a long time but you didn't answer." "I was a little sleepy in the afternoon, so I wanted to lie down for a while." "But I just fell asleep and you woke me up, didn't you?" Xueqing said with a smile. The conversation in the living room continued. I didn't dare to move in the closet. Through the cracks in the closet, I accidentally saw the huge wedding photo of the 2 of them hanging on the opposite wall. In the wedding photo, Xueqing is wearing a white strapless wedding dress, looking exceptionally noble and beautiful. The man next to her is wearing a white suit and is also tall and handsome. The 2 of them are embracing and kissing, the image frozen in time, a sweet and warm wedding photo just like that presented itself to my eyes. But thinking that Xueqing had cheated on her husband after only a year, and now she was doing it with me in their bedroom, I secretly felt amused. For a faithful marriage, Xueqing is a complete traitor. While I was thinking all sorts of things, I heard her husband say, "I'm a bit tired, I'm going to take a nap." As he spoke, I heard footsteps approaching my side of the bed. In an instant, I was so scared that I started to shake, and cold sweat broke out on my forehead. If he entered the room or opened the closet, I would be completely finished. Fortunately, just then, I heard Xueqing's somewhat anxious voice say, "What's there to sleep for? It's the weekend, why don't we go out shopping?" "You're never tired of shopping," Xueqing's husband said. "No, it's just every weekend, honey, just spend some time with me, and I'll reward you at night." Xueqing's flirtatious voice reached my ears, and I melted. Is this really the same English teacher who was aloof and arrogant in class? It was incredibly exciting to listen to. Okay, whatever you say," her husband said. "You little minx, there's nothing I can do about you. Oh, by the way, one of the dresses I hung on the balcony was blown down, can you pick it up for me first?" Xueqing said again. Her husband was a little unhappy and wanted Xueqing to pick it up herself, but Xueqing started to pout again. Her husband seemed quite helpless and had to agree. There was no sound of conversation in the living room, but I was so scared that I didn't have the strength to stand up. I cowered in the closet and gasped for breath. The wardrobe was suddenly pulled open, and the light came in, which startled me and made me stand up from the wardrobe all at once. When I saw it was Xueqing, I was finally relieved. Her face was also very ugly, and I could clearly see a trace of cold sweat on her forehead. Seeing me stupidly hiding in the wardrobe, Xueqing became irritated. "I've sent him away. You were deaf just now, so put on your clothes and get out of here." Xueqing was very angry, of course half of it was out of fear, and the other half was out of anger at seeing my indifference. I had now become a frightened bird. Where would I dare to argue back with her? Without saying a word, jumped out of the closet, almost tripped, hastily pulled up my pants, and when I opened the door to the living room I glanced to see if her husband had returned. Seeing no one I rushed out of her house in one go. I didn't get to do anything good, and I almost got caught by her husband. This time, I didn't dare to ask her when we could meet again, I just wanted to quickly escape from this dangerous place. I hurried downstairs, my face turned red with nervousness, and cold sweat formed on the palms of my hands. Fortunately, I was not caught by her husband at the door, and I didn't encounter him until I reached the first flight of stairs. Xueqing's husband is very tall, with a determined and handsome face. He wears a pair of glasses, which makes him look quite gentle. He is dressed in a white shirt and black trousers, and looks like an elite white-collar worker. Compared to him, I feel like a child. Seeing her husband appear, even though I already realized that I was out of danger, I still felt a nervous feeling like a thief, and my heartbeat started to accelerate again. I just glanced at him, then quickly looked down, afraid to look at him again, and quickly ran out of the corridor. Fortunately, he didn't recognize me, so he didn't feel anything when he looked at me just now, just like looking at a stranger. Indeed, to him I was originally a stranger. I ran all the way out of the community, all the way to the bus stop sign by the roadside, and only then did I stop, exhausted and sweating all over. I secretly felt lucky in my heart while silently swearing that I must not have sex with Xueqing at her house in the future. This was even more thrilling than riding a 3D roller coaster and watching a horror movie in the middle of the night at the cinema. It wasn't until I arrived home in a daze that my heart finally calmed down a little. My mother was a little curious to see me back so early and asked me why I hadn't stayed at my classmate's house longer. I gave a casual reply and then hid in my room. The weekend passed quickly, and I spent the 2 days in a state of panic and unease. I also thought a lot over the 2 days. If I really had sex with Xueqing and her husband found out later, I figured I would be completely finished. But when I thought about how Xueqing usually coldly and mercilessly scolded and hit me, I felt very resentful and angry. And Xueqing's body was undoubtedly fatal to a high school freshman like me who had never touched a girl before. I finally understood what it meant to be overwhelmed by lust. Perhaps my actions proved that saying, so I didn't give up the idea of continuing to find Xueqing to have sex. On Sunday afternoon, the school had evening study hall, so I had to hurry back to school. I took the 120 yuan my mother gave me and carefully slipped it into my pocket. On the way to school, I couldn't help but start thinking about where it would be appropriate to meet Xueqing next time. I felt that she would be quite safe in my car, but I didn't know if she would be willing. While I was daydreaming, I had already arrived at school. Who knew that before I even entered the school gate, I suddenly heard an angry shout from behind me. "Fuck you, Lu Feng, I'll see where you can run to today." I looked up and saw Li Weichao coming towards me with murder in his eyes, accompanied by a classmate. I was shocked. There were 2 of them and only one of me. I was no match for them at all. I turned to run, but then I saw 2 more tall students walking towards me with sneers on their lips, looking very pleased with themselves. This scared the hell out of me. On Friday, I had just happened to run into Han Xiaomei's electric cart and I had escaped, but I never thought that I would be blocked at the entrance by them as soon as I arrived at school. Li Weiqiao was determined to take revenge this time, and cold sweat broke out on the palms of my hands. I stood there not knowing what to do. Chapter 15, Getting Beaten Up. Li Weiqiao surrounded me with the three others at the school gate. He looked pleased and sinister, and sneered, "Lu Feng, you were lucky to escape last time, but I don't think anyone can save you this time. Li Weiqiao, if you've got the guts, you can fight me one-on-one." Although I was very nervous, I still said defiantly, glaring at him. Unexpectedly, as soon as I finished speaking, he slapped me without warning. I didn't even have time to react before I felt a sharp pain in my right cheek. I was really angry. Last time, Li Weiqiao provoked me and insulted my parents, so I couldn't help but fight back. This time, he even brought others to beat me up. I cursed him and raised my arm, ready to strike him in the face. But before I could do it, two of the other guys grabbed my arms and held them in place. I usually go to the playground to exercise after evening study, and I think I have quite a lot of strength. However, the two people who grabbed me were also very strong. My hands were grabbed, and I could not break free at all. I could only glare at Li Weiqiao with anger all over my face. How dare he fight back? He was looking for death. After saying that, Li Weiqiao punched me hard in the stomach. I immediately bent over in pain, feeling only stomach cramps and an urge to vomit. Before I could catch my breath, the two people holding my arms pushed me to the ground, and then Li Weiqiao and the other two people kicked me hard with their feet. I could only protect my head with my hands and let them punch and kick me. However, I could see in the corner of my eye that from time to time, some of my schoolmates passed by the school gate, not at all intending to pay any attention to the fight here. Most of them just panicked and avoided it, while some just watched us with an attitude of watching a show, and some even took out their phones to take pictures. Fights at the entrance of Linhai High School are a common occurrence, and they probably have long since become unperturbed by them, finding them just plain funny. I was kicked and punched by them for an unknown number of times before Li Weiqiao told the three of them to stop, looking at me with a condescending expression and pointing his finger at me and saying, "You little brat, you actually dared to hit me back last time, but this time I'm going to collect the principal and interest together to show you who's boss. And, Wu Jia is my girlfriend, if you dare to provoke her again, I will beat you to death, do you hear me?" After hearing Li Weiqiao's words, I cursed in my heart, "Fuck you. You're useless and you won't let me hit back, are you going to be beaten to death? Besides, do you really think Wu Jia is willing to go out with you? She is obviously a scheming bitch, and you can't even tell, what a moron." I thought about it, but of course I didn't dare say it out loud, and I didn't have the strength to speak because of the pain. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Li Weiqiao suddenly kicked me hard in the head again. I thought it was over, and I took my hands away from my head, but I didn't expect Li Weiqiao to suddenly attack again. This kick made my head buzz, and I felt my scalp swell and ache. "Fuck you, I'm asking you a question, are you deaf?" I only heard Li Weiqiao scolding angrily again. I subconsciously nodded. I was thinking that a wise man doesn't fight fire with fire, and if I didn't agree, I was afraid I would inevitably get beaten up again. As for what he said about not provoking Wu Jia, if she didn't start the fight, I wouldn't bother provoking her. After getting my affirmative answer, Li Weiqiao sneered and said, "Remember, don't take my words lightly." Then he left with the three of them laughing and joking. It wasn't until they had left for about 5 minutes that my mind finally calmed down. Apart from a little swelling, the pain had disappeared. However, my body ached all over, I limped as I walked, and I was gasping for breath. The only thing to be thankful for was that my face was fine, with no signs of injury. I shook the dust off my body and limped into the school gate. I hated Li Weiqiao to the bone, but I hated Wu Jia even more. If it weren't for what she said last time, I wouldn't have been beaten up like this. When I got to the classroom, half the people were already there. When they saw me come in, they all looked at me with strange eyes, which also revealed a hint of disdain and schadenfreude, as if they had returned to their previous attitude towards me. It seemed that they must have seen or heard that I was beaten by Li Weiqiao at the school gate. I felt very ashamed and deliberately pretended not to see anything. I walked slowly to my seat with my head down. My classmate Wu Jia, who was already at her seat, was taking out her textbooks from her bag. When she saw me, she laughed in glee. "Lu Feng, did Li Weiqiao beat you?" "No." Wu Jia's despicable behavior made me really angry. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have been beaten today. I said in a hoarse voice. "Don't pretend," I heard from Xueqing. "He said you were beaten by 4 people from Li Weiqiao at the school gate." It was miserable. Wu Jejia looked very excited, said it and poked Su Wen, who was sitting in front of her, with her finger, and asked with a smile, "Su Wen, is that right?" Su Wen turned around with a smile on his face and said to Wu Jejia, "Isn't that right?" He was beaten so badly that he cowered on the ground and didn't dare fight back. It hurt to watch. "Lu Feng, are you okay?" Although the question was directed at me, I could clearly hear the mocking tone. I was a little angry. Last week, when I beat up Li Weichao, this guy was still fawning over me, calling me Brother Feng and praising me for being awesome. I never expected that in the blink of an eye, he would be taking advantage of the situation and laughing at me. What's more, he knew that Wu Jejia and I didn't get along, and he even told her about it, which was obviously intentional. "Su Wen, you're such a bitch." I couldn't help but yell at him. "Lu Feng, what the fuck did you say?" Su Wen heard what I said and turned around angrily and cursed. "I told you what's wrong with you, you piece of shit." I continued to curse. "Lu Feng, don't think you're amazing just because you beat Li Weichao, I can still beat you." Su Wen slammed the table and stood up. I had just been beaten up at the school gate and was already angry, so when I saw Su Wen looking for trouble, I stood up without showing any weakness. I was obviously taller than him, and when I stood up, I saw his face change slightly, and he subconsciously took a step back, probably feeling the pressure too. My classmate Wu Jejia's smile on her face grew even wider, as if she hoped we would fight in the classroom. The other students in the classroom also focused all their attention on us, looking interested and waiting for a good show. Some even cheered for Su Feng. "Su Wen, beat him up. Don't look at Lu Feng, he's taller than you, but he's never fought before." Su Wen seemed to be encouraged, his eyes immediately became determined, and without saying a word, he grabbed my collar and pushed me hard backwards. Chapter 16, No Waiting for Expired Goods. I was pushed by Su Wen, and I didn't expect that he was quite strong, almost knocking over the table of the student behind me. When I finally managed to steady myself, Su Wen had already come down the row and was in front of me, still trying to grab my clothes. This time I reacted quickly, grabbed his hand, and without thinking twice, pulled him forcefully into my arms, while stepping aside myself. I was much stronger than Su Wen, and he was caught off guard, so he immediately fell next to my seat like a dog, and Wu Jejia also hid herself in fear. "Fuck you, you dare to hit me." Su Wen got up from the ground, cursing and swearing, and still wanted to fight back against me. Just then, the bell for evening study sounded. Su Wen had to give up, his face covered in dust, and his forehead still had a bruise from falling on the ground, which looked a bit swollen. He glared at me with hatred in his eyes and cursed, "Lu Feng, you just wait, I'm not fucking done with you." After he finished, he didn't dare to stand for long, and hurriedly returned to his seat. It seemed that the other students were very disappointed. A good show had just started and ended, and it was obvious that they hadn't enjoyed it enough. But since class had already started, they didn't dare make a sound either. They all sat back down in their seats obediently, and the classroom became quiet. Wu Jejia also sat back down, but she still had that expression that I hated. She gave me a sneering look with a contemptuous expression, and then she took out her textbook and started doing her homework. Although I had just made Su Wen fall, I was not happy at all. The pain in my body was the least of my concerns. I had thought that after I had beaten Li Weichao, my classmates would change their view of me, but now it had returned to the way it was before. The only thing that was worth being happy about was that Han Xiaomei, who sat in the front row, threw me a concerned glance. I smiled gratefully, and Han Xiaomei, without saying anything, turned her gaze away. Evening study session is supervised by homeroom teacher Wu, but I'm in no mood to study. After reluctantly finishing the homework I didn't get done, I just sit there in a daze. My mind is in a mess, and apart from the pain in my body, I'm also worried about what happened with teacher Xiao. We almost got caught at her house on Saturday, and she was very angry when she told me to leave. I don't know if she's in a better mood now. I tried to send a text message to Miss Xiao, asking if she was free tonight. After waiting for a long time, I couldn't help feeling a little discouraged. I stayed up until the next evening study session and then hurriedly left the classroom. I didn't plan to go to the playground to exercise tonight either, so I quickly went back to the dormitory to sleep. After all, my body was still in pain. Unexpectedly, as soon as I got out of the teaching building, a clear voice sounded behind me, "Lu Feng." I turned around and saw Han Xiaomei, who was smiling as she walked towards me. I was a little surprised that Han Xiaomei took the initiative to call out to me. Usually, I go about on my own on campus, without a single friend, and no one is willing to pay any attention to me. Although Han Xiaomei and I rode the same electric bicycle back on Friday, it was only because I was desperate and asked her for help. I never expected her to take the initiative to call out to me on campus. Lu Feng, are you okay? Han Xiaomei asked with concern as she walked up to me. Hearing this, I was quite touched. Ever since Han Xiaomei saved me last time, I have been grateful. Now that she is concerned about my physical condition, I secretly consider her my friend. I quickly straightened my back and smiled, saying, "It's okay, it doesn't hurt, and it will be all better in a couple of days." Han Xiaomei smiled lightly and said, "I didn't think you could handle it quite like that." I felt a little embarrassed when she praised me like that, so I changed the subject and asked, "Where are you going?" "Back to the dormitory." "What about you?" Han Xiaomei asked with a smile. I said I was also going back to the dormitory, and we both laughed. We walked together in the direction of the dormitory. Although the boys' and girls' dormitories were separate in high school, they were in the same location. The girls' dormitory was just to the east of the boys' dormitory, separated by a tall wall. Han Xiaomei and I chatted as we walked, strolling through the night on campus. Although Han Xiaomei was a little short, less than 1.6 meters, she was pretty and had a cheerful personality, unlike the introvert I usually assumed her to be. Walking with her, I felt very happy, and all the unpleasantness I had felt in the past 2 days was left behind. I could even smell the sweet fragrance of a woman on her. The moonlight shone on her fair and smooth-side face, her long eyelashes fluttering. Her pair of beautiful eyes looked very clear and intelligent. Although she didn't have the mature charm of teacher Xiao, she had more innocence and cuteness. "Lu Feng, I'm really sorry. I apologize to you on Jie's behalf. If it weren't for her, you wouldn't have fought with Wei Chaoli." We were having a good chat when Han Xiaomei suddenly changed the subject and apologized to me. My smile immediately faded, and I said, "Han Xiaomei, why are you so kind as to come and find me? I didn't expect you to come to plead for your best friend Wu Jie." I said with a cold face, "This has nothing to do with you, you don't need to apologize on Wu Jie's behalf. But Jie is my best friend. She is not like this normally, she is nice to everyone, I didn't expect her to target you specifically, anyway, I'm sorry." Han Xiaomei looked at me with apologetic eyes. At that moment, I really wanted to scold her, and tell her that she couldn't see it, that Wu Jie was disgusted by my poor family and my poor grades, and that was why she was acting like that. But in the face of Han Xiaomei's pure, white, pretty face and apologetic eyes, I ultimately held back. It just so happened that the boys' and girls' dormitories were right in front of me, so I told her, "I know, thank you for your concern," and ignored her, walking straight towards the boys' dormitory. I don't know what Han Xiaomei was thinking, but my mood once again fell into the doldrums. As soon as I returned to the dormitory, Marin and Xiankai and the others returned to the dormitory. Marin and Xiankai did not change with the wind like Xueqing, and first took the initiative to ask me about the situation of the beating with concern. After hearing that I was fine, Marin asked with a smile, "Lu Feng, I saw you walking with Han Xiaomei just now. Are you two dating?" Although dating is commonplace in high school these days, I still blushed a little when I heard this, and quickly retorted, "Don't be ridiculous, we just happened to run into each other and we're going back to the dormitory together." Ma Lin and the others laughed, but it was obvious that they didn't believe me. Actually, I can't blame them. I usually don't socialize with my classmates and am a loner, so it's not surprising that they noticed me walking with Han Xiaomei tonight and couldn't help but think in that direction. But they didn't dwell on the matter of Han Xiaomei and me anymore, and began discussing whether they should climb over the wall to go online that night. At first, everyone was a little afraid, but Xiankai patted his chest and said he would treat everyone to a late-night snack, which drew a cheer from the group. Xiankai asked me if I wanted to go with him. This was the first time he had invited me, and I was quite happy about it. I was about to say yes when I received a text message on my phone. It was from teacher Xiao. "Tonight at 11:30, Lido Hotel, room 302. Don't be late." Chapter 17, Wallet. When I saw this text message from Xueqing, I was thrown off balance, and my heart immediately became excited. I originally thought that what happened on Saturday had made her very angry, but I didn't expect her to send me a message back and take the initiative to find a place for me to go. Even though I knew that she wanted to get rid of her entanglement with me as soon as possible, I still couldn't suppress my inner joy. So I didn't bother going online with Qiankai and the others, declined their kind offer, and quickly went to take a shower. Last time at Xueqing's house, I discovered that she was a germaphobe. I thought to myself, if I wash up now, I won't have to do it again when I go to the hotel. While taking a shower, I noticed that I had bruises all over my body, and they hurt when I touched them. Fortunately, they were only superficial wounds, so I didn't need to go to the infirmary. I couldn't help but think about the time I was beaten up in front of the school gate, and I secretly decided that I would definitely get revenge on Li Weiqiao if I had the chance in the future. When I got out of the shower, Jin Kai and the others had already left, and the dormitory was empty. It seemed that they had gone out before the dormitory was locked. But that was good, so they wouldn't ask too many questions when I went out. I changed into some clean clothes and left the dormitory. By now, the dormitory iron gate was closed, the street lamps were out, and apart from the moonlight, everything was dark and silent. Of course, every now and then, you could hear the occasional sound of conversation from the other dormitories. But I couldn't care less, and immediately climbed over the wall to get out. While climbing over the wall to get out, I didn't expect to run into a few students from other classes, also preparing to climb over the wall to go online. One of them, a tall, handsome boy with spiky hair, couldn't help smiling when he saw that I was the same as them, and asked, "Which class are you in? Are you also going online?" I knew this boy, a well-known troublemaker in the grade 10 class. His name was Qin Feiyang, and I heard that he was very good at fighting, and that the leaders of the grade 10 class had to be polite to him when they met. He spoke to me with a contemptuous smile on the corner of his mouth, obviously looking down on me. I felt a little upset, but I didn't dare not answer, because his eyes were very sharp, and there seemed to be a gleam in them, along with a hint of unruliness, obviously honed from frequent fights. And he was accompanied by several big and burly companions. I nodded and grunted, but I didn't expect one of the burly boys with a face full of acne to say, "He looks like the guy Li Weiqiao and the others beat up at the school gate during the day." After he said that, the other few people also reacted, and after taking a closer look at me in the moonlight, they all laughed and said, "That's right," with expressions of schadenfreude all over their faces. Qin Feiyang didn't take me seriously either, just casually asking me a few questions, laughing and joking with a few of his companions before climbing over the wall and going out. I felt quite depressed. I was looked down upon everywhere I went. But they were in a crowd, so I didn't dare say anything. After Qin Feiyang and the others climbed over the wall and left, I followed suit and climbed over the wall, landing in a small forest behind the school. It was dark in the forest, so I turned on the flashlight on my phone and couldn't wait to meet Xueqing. But I couldn't help being overjoyed when I shone the flashlight on the ground. In front of me was a black leather wallet, and I could vaguely see a few red bills peeking out of it. Without saying a word, I quickly picked up the wallet and opened it. Inside were a full 10 old persons' heads, making my heart beat uncontrollably fast. In addition, I also found an ID card. When I saw the name on the ID card, I suddenly realized that the wallet had been dropped by Qin Feiyang when he climbed over the wall just now, and this was his ID card. But 1,000 yuan is a huge sum of money for me, a poor high school student. Usually, my mother only gives me 120 yuan a week for living expenses, which adds up to less than 500 yuan a month. If I put 1,000 yuan in my pocket, I can live comfortably for a long time, and I can buy some new clothes and shoes, so that I won't be looked down upon by the people at school. And I won't be in the embarrassing situation of not being able to buy condoms like last time. But I'm a little scared when I think that this money was dropped by Qin Feiyang. I'm the only one who will climb over the wall with them tonight. If he remembers that he dropped his wallet here and comes back to look for it but doesn't find it, he will definitely think that I picked up his wallet. At that time, it won't be just a beating, he might even report it to the school, and then I won't be able to study at Linhai High School anymore. The more I thought about it, the more scared I got. After hesitating for a long time, I finally decided to return the wallet to him tomorrow. Once I made up my mind, I felt much better. I put the wallet away and looked at the time. I didn't realize it was already 11:15. Xueqing had set the time for 11:30 and had specifically emphasized that she would not wait if I was late. Fortunately, I knew that the Lido Hotel was near our school, and it only took me 10 minutes to run there. When I arrived at the hotel, there were still a few minutes to go before 11:30. I was tired and out of breath, with sweat pouring down my face. I walked into the hotel with an excited but apprehensive heart. I was apprehensive because this was, after all, the first time I had stayed in a hotel, and I was afraid that the hotel staff would turn me away because I was a minor. Fortunately, the receptionist didn't say much when she saw me. She just politely asked if I wanted to stay at the hotel. I said I was looking for someone and told her Xueqing's name. She pointed me in the right direction and went back to her work. I followed her instructions and went upstairs to find room 302. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. A cold but familiar voice came from inside. "Who is it?" It was Xueqing. My heart began to beat violently again, and I answered with difficulty, "Teacher Xiao, it's me." After a while, the door opened, and I saw Xueqing opening the door. I really felt an urge to rush at her, my blood surging. She seemed to have just finished taking a shower, her hair was still damp and stuck to her fair, smooth cheeks. She was wrapped in a white bath towel, and a large, snowy expanse of her chest was revealed, extremely enticing. The bottom hem of the towel was very short, barely covering her round, perky buttocks, and her two long, pale thighs were on display, still dripping with water and glowing with a crystal-like luster. Xueqing had obviously just come out of the bathroom, and her body was still steaming, carrying with it the faint fragrance of shower gel in a woman, making my eyes go straight and my body react involuntarily. Chapter 18: The Phone. When she saw me, Xueqing's expression was cold, and there was even a hint of contempt. Just like the way she greeted me the last time I went to her house, she told me to go take a shower after I followed her into the house. I just took a shower at the dormitory, I hurriedly said. She glanced at me and said with disgust, if you've already showered, why didn't you change into clean clothes? You're filthy. I felt quite aggrieved. I had just changed clothes after taking a shower. It was just because I usually didn't have much to wear, and I could wear the same clothes for a long time without washing them, and over time they just became impossible to wash off. But I didn't want to explain to Xueqing either, because that would only make her look down on me even more. Xueqing's expression was annoying, and it made me angry inside. I thought to myself that I must punish you properly later, so that you know I'm not someone to be messed with. So I went up to her and put my arm around her. Xueqing seemed used to being suddenly embraced like this, and this time she didn't even resist, letting me hold her and feel around in her arms. She just said coldly, Lu Feng, you broke your promise. You must keep the promise you made me. I nodded, not caring about what she was saying. Xueqing's skin was smooth and silky, and the touch of it was irresistible. The mature woman's fragrance exuding from her body made me dizzy with desire, and my hand was very unfaithful to her. In less than 2 minutes, she began to pant, responding to my passion of her own accord. The bath towel on her body naturally fell off under my attack, revealing her snow-white and seductive body. We fell into each other's arms on the soft, comfortable bed, comforting each other. She was so exhausted from my advances that she let me wear a condom. The condom was in my pants pocket, which I had prepared deliberately before I left. I had wasted one last time at her house, and this was the last one. Although Xueqing and I had not succeeded on these occasions, at least I had taken advantage of her many times, which made me quite satisfied both mentally and physically. Although I hated her, there was no denying that her plump body had a fatal appeal to me. If I succeeded with her this time, I was afraid that I would never be able to take advantage of her again. Thinking about this, I felt exceptionally lost. My heart, which had been full of passion, inevitably became a little low. Subconsciously, I took my hand, which had just been inserted into my trouser pocket, out and said with my head bowed, I forgot to bring it. I didn't dare to look up at Xueqing's eyes, for fear that she would see through me. Upon hearing this, she froze for a moment, her hand motion stopped, and her expression was a little strange. How could you forget such an important thing? Didn't you remember last time? I left in such a hurry that I forgot. I cursed myself inwardly for being shameless, but I still said with a stiff upper lip. Forget it, just use the ones in the hotel. They're in the drawer of the bedside table. If they're not there, they're in the drawer of the table over there. Xueqing didn't turn away this time, but said calmly. Her words made me suddenly realize that, damn it, the hotel already had condoms, and I was stupid enough to think about taking advantage of her a few more times and hiding the condoms I was wearing. It was completely useless. Since it had come to this, I could only resign myself to fate. I got up and walked over to the bedside table, opened the drawer. Just as Xueqing had said, there were indeed condoms inside, Durex ones at that. It seemed that Xueqing often stayed in hotels, otherwise she wouldn't be so familiar with the hotel decorations. Then I thought about the affair she had had with the headmaster Huang Weiqiang last time. I guessed that she and Huang Weiqiang had also stayed in hotels a lot. For some reason, I felt a surge of jealousy. Seeing that I opened the bedside table drawer but didn't move, Xueqing thought there was nothing in it and couldn't help but frown, asking, "There's nothing in there? Go and look in the drawer of that table over there." There is. I took a deep breath to get rid of my wild thoughts, and took out the Durex. After all, Xueqing was the teacher and I was the student. If she hadn't always targeted me, this wouldn't have happened today, and I wouldn't be jealous of her. Seeing me take out the condom, Xueqing seemed to be relieved, her expression on her face much more relaxed. In a gentle voice that she had never used with me before, she said, "This is the last time we'll do this. I'm giving you my body, so you have to keep your promise." I understand. Even though I was holding the condom in my hand, I couldn't feel happy. After tonight, Xueqing and I would return to our previous relationship, and I would no longer be able to take advantage of her. I really felt a little reluctant in my heart. Just then, Xueqing's hand reached over and helped me take off my clothes, drawing my attention back to her seductive body and making my reaction come back strongly. I quickly undressed and was about to put on the condom when the phone suddenly rang. It was Xueqing's phone on the bedside table. The ringing caught us both by surprise. Xueqing quickly sat up, ignoring the need to cover herself, and quickly got up to get the phone. With her movements, the full, snow-white breasts undulated, a surging wave, taking one's breath away. Thinking about the plump softness I had just touched made me even more impatient. But when Xueqing saw the caller ID on her phone, her expression obviously changed. After answering, she asked in a very low voice with a smile, "Director Huang, what's the matter for calling me so late?" Chapter 19, The Fierce Qin Feiyang. Hearing Xueqing say this, I understood that it was probably the call from the dean of students. Seeing Xueqing smiling flirtatiously as she answered the phone, I felt very uncomfortable, but there was nothing I could do. After all, Xueqing and I were only in a coercive relationship, and it had nothing to do with me who she was with. "You said I'll be the head of the year level next semester, don't lie to me, or no one will be with you anymore." Xueqing continued to talk on the phone, smiling happily, and casually sat down at the edge of the bed, reclining, striking a seductive pose, as if she had completely forgotten that I, a hot-blooded young man, was by her side. "No, my husband is home tonight, I'm talking to you on the phone in the kitchen, he can't know." "What's the rush, maybe next time, we have plenty of time anyway." I could only hear Xueqing continue talking to Huang Weiqiang on the phone. From her conversation, I could tell that the reason the two had become lovers was because Xueqing wanted to use Huang Weiqiang to get ahead, and the price was to sell her body. Although I felt a little ashamed of Xueqing for selling her body for fame and fortune, I still hoped that she would stay with me tonight, and it would make me feel a little better to hear her refuse Huang Weiqiang's invitation. But I was completely disappointed by her next words. "Okay, I can't stand your persistence, I'll say yes." After hanging up the phone, Xueqing's pretty face revealed a contented smile, probably basking in the joy of her imminent assent. But when her gaze turned to me, her expression suddenly turned cold. She subconsciously pulled the towel around herself and asked coldly, "Did you hear the phone call just now?" "I heard half of it." I was a little upset, so I answered in a muffled voice. "It's even better that you heard it. Huang Weiqiang is looking for me, and I have to go over there now. Forget about tonight, let's talk about our business next time." After Xueqing finished speaking, she didn't wait for me to answer, and she got up directly and walked towards the bathroom. In a short while, she came out again, but she was already dressed and neatly attired, as if she had returned to the image of that arrogant and cold English teacher. "Teacher Xiao, can you not leave tonight?" I asked with some grievance as I sat by the bed. Although I had the thought of not wanting to be with her this time and wanting to take advantage of her a few more times, it was all based on the situation where I was the only one enjoying Xueqing. Now she was leaving here for another man and giving up things that had been agreed upon beforehand. I really felt a bit bad about it. "No." Xueqing answered resolutely, picking up her bag as she looked like she was leaving right away. I was so angry that I couldn't help but scold, "Do you still have a shred of shame? You actually got together with Director Huang to get ahead." Upon hearing this, Xueqing obviously froze for a moment, as if she didn't expect a high school student like me to say such lofty words. Then she said with a cold face, "This is none of your business. Lu Feng, don't forget your identity. You are just a poor student. Your family is poor, your grades are poor, not to mention that you are particularly despicable, not much better than Huang Weiqiang. After we finish our business next time, we'll be even. I don't have time to mess around with you now." After she finished speaking, Xueqing ignored my feelings and quickly left in her high heels, slamming the door behind her. As the room door closed, the whole room became quiet, but at this time, I felt indescribable discomfort in my heart. Even though I hated Xueqing, I still couldn't breathe after hearing her harsh comments. Whenever she was with me, she was unusually gentle, and although her attitude towards me remained cold otherwise, I couldn't help but be infatuated with her body, and even inexplicably liked the way she looked when she smiled and laughed and when she was angry. I felt that there was something wrong with me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Xueqing's departure just made me feel especially depressed. After staying in my room for a while, I got dressed, picked up my scattered thoughts, and left the hotel. I walked aimlessly along the street in the night, but I had no intention of going back to the dormitory. I suddenly remembered that Marin and Xian and the others were surfing the internet in an internet cafe near the university, so I decided to go find them and relieve my depression online. When I arrived at the internet cafe, I found them in the lobby on the first floor. Marin and Xian and the others were playing LOL, and they were having a great time playing 5-player games, and the sounds of their shouts could be heard in the internet cafe. The other two roommates were playing Crossfire. I stood behind Xian and patted him on the shoulder. Xian noticed it was me and couldn't help but smile. He took off his headphones and asked, "Brother Phone, I thought you weren't going to come online anymore, why are you here now?" I replied perfunctorily that I was bored and wanted to play. Of course I wouldn't tell him the truth. "Okay, I'll treat you. You find a machine and monkey and I can teach you to play a Higo, it's really interesting," Xian said with a smile, quite generous. So I found a machine and logged in with my QQ number to play a few rounds of a Higo with Xian and the others. In the past, when I went online, I either listened to music or watched movies. The only game I had ever played was QQ Speed, so I was clumsy at playing LOL. I kept dying. Fortunately, Xian and the others didn't care. They played match mode and kept talking and laughing, with constant sounds of joy, which infected me and made me feel like I had found friends. My original lost mood also improved a lot. When we got off the plane, I asked Marin, "Have you guys seen Qin Feiyang from 108? I was still thinking about returning the wallet in my pocket to him. It had been in my pocket like a hot potato, and it made me feel uneasy. Hearing me ask about Qin Feiyang for no reason, everyone was very puzzled. Xian asked me what I wanted with him. I didn't tell them the truth, just that I saw him climb over the wall to go online when I did earlier, so I just asked casually. Everyone was relieved, and Xian said he hadn't seen him and guessed he had gone to another internet cafe. I thought to myself, I'll wait until the day to return his wallet, so I didn't look for him at the internet cafe. We had a barbecue together, naturally Xian paid for it. After eating, we climbed over the wall and returned to the dormitory. Everyone was exhausted and fell asleep immediately. The next day during morning reading class, I saw Xueqing sneering at me from time to time. I wondered what he wanted, so I asked coldly, "What are you looking at?" "I'm looking at the pretty Wu Jiejia, not at you, so what are you excited about?" Su Wenming looked at me with a disdainful expression and said indifferently. I knew that he was not convinced after I felt him yesterday, so I ignored him and continued reading my book. I was thinking about finding time to return Qin Feiyang's wallet at noon to avoid getting into trouble. However, I didn't expect to bump into him in the toilet when I went there during the morning reading class. When I saw him, he was lecturing an obese boy. The boy was huddled in the corner, his face covered in dirt, being kicked hard by Qin Feiyang, who was kicking him with every ounce of strength he had, screaming for mercy. The other students who were in the toilet at the time saw this scene and hurriedly left after going to the toilet, so as not to get involved. I had to return Qin Feiyang's wallet, so I stood to the side, waiting for him to finish beating the boy before returning the wallet to him. But even as I watched, I still felt a pang of sympathy for the fat boy. Damn, Qin Feiyang really knows how to beat people up, much more ferocious than Li Weiqiao and the others. He kicked with all his strength, and the fat boy's mouth was bleeding. Qin Feiyang's handsome face had become a bit hideous as a result. While kicking, he cursed and yelled, "Damn you, and you went out to surf the internet, and you were the only one in the dormitory. If it wasn't you fat pig who stole it, then who did? Last time you stole a pack of cigarettes from me and I let it go, but you really think I'm an easy target, don't you? If you don't hand it over today, I'll kill you. Yang, please spare my life, please. It really wasn't me." The fat boy responded in pain, but it was of no help at all. After kicking for a while, Qin Feiyang finally found me. His gaze immediately became sharp, and he yelled at me, "What the fuck are you looking at? Do you believe I'll beat you up too?" Chapter 20, I was reported for climbing over the wall. I didn't dare to retort after being scolded by Qin Feiyang. I was joking. The leaders of several classes in the first year had to be polite when they met Qin Feiyang. If I retorted, I didn't think I would want to stay at Linhai High School in the future. I had to honestly answer, when I went out to surf the internet last night, I picked up a wallet outside the wall. There was your ID card in it, so I think it should be yours. I was thinking of returning the wallet to you. Saying this, I took out the wallet I picked up last night from my pocket and handed it over. When he saw the wallet in my hand, Qin Feiyang's eyes immediately lit up. The anger on his face disappeared, replaced by the excitement of having recovered what he had lost. He snatched the wallet from my hand, opened it and carefully counted the money inside. But when he found that the amount was correct, the smile on his face grew even wider. He looked up at me with a smile on his face and said, "What a coincidence, it's you. Thank you so much, I never thought you were such a nice person." He then pulled out a red bill from his wallet and handed it to me, saying, "This is to thank you, take it." Who is Qin Feiyang? How dare I take his money? Besides, I had once considered stealing his wallet, but I was afraid of getting beaten up if I was caught, so I returned it to him. I never thought he would actually give me 100 yuan as a thank you. I quickly said no, and resolutely refused to take his money. Seeing that I refused, Qin Feiyang didn't insist any further, and with a smile, he put away the wallet and took out a pack of cigarettes, offering me one and saying, "Do you smoke? Have a cigarette." I shook my head. "It's okay, have a cigarette, and you'll learn how to smoke." This time, Qin Feiyang insisted on handing me the cigarette and personally lighting it for me. I took a drag, choking and coughing a few times. Qin Feiyang laughed and lit a cigarette himself, puffing away. The fat boy who had been huddled in the corner after being beaten by him just now said with a pained expression on his swollen and bruised face, "Yang, I already said it wasn't me who stole it, but you still hit me without asking any questions. I only hit you because I think highly of you, and as punishment for stealing a pack of cigarettes from me last time. If you don't agree, you can come and get your beating back from me." Qin Feiyang said coldly to the fat boy. "No, no, no," the fat boy said quickly, scared. "Yang, can I go now?" "Get lost. Don't steal anything in the future, or don't blame me for not warning you." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The fat boy quickly agreed, then got up and limped away. After the fat boy left, Qin Feiyang explained with a smile, "This is a roommate in my dormitory. He has dirty hands and feet. I thought he stole my wallet when I lost it, so I lectured him. I hope I didn't scare you just now." "No." I took a drag and replied. After the initial discomfort of the smoke, I gradually learned the technique of smoking. You have to swallow the smoke after smoking before it comes out of your nose. It's true that the first time I smoked, it felt really different and made me feel quite comfortable. Seeing that I was quite enjoying it, Qin Feiyang also laughed. When he's not angry, he seems quite easy to get along with. He also laughed and asked me what happened at the school gate yesterday and why I was beaten by Li Weiqiao. After all, I had just met Qin Feiyang, and I was embarrassed to tell him about my problems. I just said that I accidentally had a little quarrel with Li Weiqiao, so he asked someone to beat me up. That brat Li Weiqiao only acts cocky because he hangs out with Wang Jun, and in my eyes he is nothing. Next time he dares to beat you up again, you let me know, and I'll help you beat him up." Qin Feiyang said calmly as he smoked. He smoked with a very cool posture, and his tone was calm and composed, as if he were talking about something very ordinary. I felt a sense of confidence and strength from him, and I developed some good feelings towards Qin Feiyang. We chatted for a while, and after finishing the cigarette, we left the toilet together. After parting with Qin Feiyang, I was quite excited. Although what he said about having something to do sounded like a polite excuse, if I really got beaten up next time, I would definitely not stand by and do nothing if I wanted to find him. Knowing such a famous upperclassman, a bully, made me feel much more confident, and I walked with my back straight. When I returned to class, I was surprised to hear class monitor Yang Lei tell me that my homeroom teacher, Mr. Wu, was looking for me and wanted to see me in the office. I was a little puzzled, wondering what Mr. Wu wanted with me, but as I left, I saw Su Wen sneering at me and casually saying, "Lu Feng, did you get into trouble again? I guess your homeroom teacher is going to punish you, so just wait for it." Seeing Su Wen's despicable look, I was furious and simply ignored him. When I arrived at the office, Mr. Wu was sitting in his seat with a serious expression. When he saw me, he turned his gaze towards me and asked coldly, "Lu Feng, did you climb over the wall to go online last night?" I felt a thud in my heart and suddenly became afraid. At the same time, I was very surprised. I didn't expect to go online last night and have the homeroom teacher find out this morning. No. I knew the consequences of being caught going over the wall to go online. At the light end of the stick, I would be given a lecture, and at the heavy end, my parents would be called in. I didn't want my parents to come to school for this, so I answered with a stiff upper lip. "Lu Feng, I didn't expect you to be so stubborn. You have been reported by a classmate, and you still dare to argue." Wu Gang slammed the table in anger. Hearing this, I couldn't help but think of Su Wen's meaningful words before coming to the office. Could it be that guy who did this? Did Su Wen report it? I couldn't help but ask. Teacher Wu didn't answer me directly, but sneered, "What time is it and you still have the heart to ask this? Lu Feng, last time I didn't punish you severely for fighting, it seems I was too kind to you. Now you actually dare to climb over the wall to go online. Just wait, I'll call your father right now. Teacher Wu's words made me even more convinced that it was Xueqing who was behind it. No wonder my homeroom teacher knew I went out to surf the internet at night. And I wasn't the only one who went over the wall to surf the internet. Xian Kai and the others all went, but only I was reported. Obviously, Xueqing did it to get back at me for yesterday. For a moment, I hated Xueqing, but I was also afraid that Teacher Wu would call my dad. I clearly remember that last time, because of Xueqing, after I went back, my dad beat me so badly that I couldn't get out of bed for half a month. No, Mr. Wu, I know I was wrong. I quickly admitted my fault. Unfortunately, he didn't pay any attention to me and still called. After hanging up, I was completely desperate. I stood in front of him, dumbfounded, not daring to move. Go back to the classroom first, and we'll talk when your father arrives. Mr. Wu didn't say anything more when he saw me like this, and waved me out. I don't know how I got back to the classroom, but when I saw Xueqing sitting in his seat gloating at me, I was filled with anger. My eyes almost burst into flames as I angrily yelled at him, Xueqing, you really are a big bitch. Lu Feng, fuck you. Try saying that again. Xueqing was also angered by my scolding, and stood up from his seat to scold me back. Chapter 21, Parents Come to School. What's wrong with you? I'm going to beat you up. Go complain to the homeroom teacher. Do you have any shame at all? I retorted angrily. I'm the one who told Teacher Su. So what? You want to beat me up? Come on. Xueqing refused to back down, and rolled up his sleeves, looking ready to fight. Our argument had attracted the attention of the rest of the class. Everyone looked at us with excited expressions, except for Han Xiaomei and Xian Kai. At this time, I noticed that Han Xiaomei's eyes were clearly filled with worry. My heart warmed, and the anger in my heart eased slightly. My classmate Wu Jiejia, on the other hand, looked as if she was hoping for trouble, and she even started a commotion on the side. Fight, you guys fight, don't just talk. Wu Jiejia, shut up. She spoke next to me, and her voice was extraordinarily harsh. I couldn't help but glare at her viciously and say. She seemed to sense my anger, and Wu Jiejia was startled. Her face turned pale, and she shut up and dared not speak. Lu Feng, what kind of man shouts at a beautiful woman? If you're so capable, let's fight one-on-one. This time I don't believe I can't beat you. Xueqing continued to challenge my limits. I couldn't hold back anymore, and I was about to rush over and punch him, but unexpectedly, the bell rang at the critical moment. Damn the bell! I hated with a vengeance. Since class had already started, we couldn't let our hair down, so we had to give up for the time being. However, the way we looked at each other was full of anger and unwillingness. In addition, I could also see the disappointment in the eyes of the other students, which made me feel even more depressed. This was a mathematics class, and the mathematics teacher was a middle-aged man with glasses named Zhang Wei. He gave lively lectures, but I couldn't hear a word he said. My heart was filled with anger, and I had nowhere to vent it. I wanted to get up from my seat and beat Xueqing right now. Xueqing is despicable. He can't beat me, so he's resorted to such a despicable tactic. Although I was filled with righteous indignation, I gradually calmed down. If the homeroom teacher found out that I had fought during class, I would get into even more trouble when my father came to school. Xueqing, just you wait. I'll deal with you after school. Just as the first class was ending, the thing I dreaded most happened. Homeroom teacher Wu came to the classroom to call me, saying that my father was here. Hearing this news, my head was buzzing. The last time my father beat me, leaving me with open sores and bruises, had become an indelible shadow in my heart. At the time, I had vowed to listen to my teachers, study hard, and improve my grades. Who would have thought that after such a short time, I would have committed another offense and this time I was really dead? I felt a little desperate, but Xueqing was gloating, laughing at my misfortune. I wanted to take scissors and rip his mouth open, but the homeroom teacher was staring at me coldly, so I couldn't let out my anger, even if it was raging. I had to lower my head and follow Teacher Wu out of the classroom with a worried heart. When I arrived at the office, I saw my father. My father is an honest farmer. In addition to cultivating a few mu of land at home, he also works as a worker in a machinery factory. It seemed that he had come directly from the machinery factory, still wearing his blue work clothes full of engine oil. He stood there with an embarrassed expression on his face. Because his clothes were so dirty, he was also embarrassed to sit down, for fear of staining the chair. The other teachers in the office all cast strange looks at him, as if they looked down on him and were disgusted. This kind of look was just like the way the classmates and teachers looked at me, and it made me feel very uncomfortable. But before I could think about it too much, I sensed something was wrong the moment my father saw me. "You little brat, you're always getting into trouble. Are you trying to make me die of anger?" My father was furious and rushed up to hit me. Fortunately, Teacher Wu stopped him in time, otherwise I think he would have knocked me to the ground in one go. I took advantage of the situation and hid behind Mr. Wu, so that he wouldn't really teach me a lesson if he lost his temper. "Don't get excited, Mr. Liu, I called you here this time to educate your child properly. Hitting people will never solve the underlying problem." Although Mr. Wu did the unthinkable and invited my father back, he was still relatively reasonable at the critical moment and persuaded my father gently. Under Miss Wu's persuasion, my father's anger subsided a little, but he still looked at me with anger in his eyes, as if he hated me for being so disappointing. After scolding me a little, he told me to apologize to Miss Wu. How dare I say no when things had come to this, so I apologized honestly. Miss Wu and my father talked about the education of high school students, and my father kept nodding his head for an hour. I stood next to them, listening, until my feet went numb. After the conversation, Mr. Wu asked me to write a 800-word self-reflection and hand it to him before school ended on Wednesday. I quickly agreed. Before leaving, my father thanked Mr. Wu profusely and asked him to be strict with me. Mr. Wu nodded seriously and asked me to see my father out of the school gate. I was afraid that my father would beat me again, so I didn't dare to see him off. I just wanted to go back to the classroom, but I didn't dare to disobey the orders of my homeroom teacher. I had no choice but to follow my father out of the office. The two of us walked along the tree-lined path on campus. I kept my head down and walked behind him, keeping a certain distance to prevent him from hitting me at any time. Fortunately, what I was worried about did not happen. My father just looked particularly depressed, walking in front of me and sighing from time to time. I felt a little uncomfortable watching him, and for a moment I felt that I had really done something wrong. But I didn't dare to speak, so I just followed silently. Until we reached the school gate, my father finally stopped and looked back at me. I was scared and took a few steps back. Fortunately, he didn't intend to hit me, but just sighed deeply and said, "Xiaofeng, if you really can't read, just don't. Studying at school is also suffering. Why don't you go back to the farm with me and work?" I was dumbfounded when I heard the words "go back to the farm." I didn't expect my father to suddenly say this to me, so I quickly refused, saying that I wanted to study and not go back to the farm. "Then study hard and don't get into trouble. Don't do it again, you hear me?" After saying this, my father's face turned cold, and without looking at me again, he strode away from the school. I stood at the school gate for a long time, watching my father's thin, tall, slightly stooped back as he left. When I returned to the classroom, it was already the last class, Xiao's class. He was wearing a white OL professional outfit that revealed his lotus-like arms and two slender, snow-white thighs. His chest was round and his buttocks were perky, making him look very sexy. But at that moment, I had no heart to pay attention to these things. I stood at the door of the classroom and reported. Xueqing did not stop me, but just let me go back to my seat with a cold face. I didn't care about the sneer at the corner of Wu Zheji's mouth, but Su Wen in the front row kept looking back at me with a gloating look, which I couldn't stand. But in the end, I couldn't help it, and I changed my mind about wanting to punch him after school. I saw my father's frustrated and sad expression just now, and I can't forget the way he guards the other teachers' suspicious stares in the office. For my father's sake, and for my own, I shouldn't cause any more trouble. So I gave up the idea of teaching Su Wen a lesson. After the last class in the morning, when the students all went to the cafeteria to eat, I had no appetite at all, so I leaned over my desk and fell asleep. But then I heard the voice I hated so much. "Yo, Lu Feng, what's wrong with you? Your homeroom teacher just called your father to school. You're not crying because you're scared, are you? You're such a wimp. If I'd known you were such a sissy, I wouldn't have told on you." The person speaking was Su Wen. Everyone else in the classroom had already left, but he didn't hurry to go. Seeing how I looked, he just had to mock me. I looked up and glared at him fiercely. "Su Wen, shut up. You think you can tell me to shut up? Who do you think you are? I saw what your father was like just now. He was really filthy, just like picking up rubbish. I said to you, why are you so dirty? It turns out you learned it from your father. Both the big and the little one are rubbish." Su Wen laughed happily. This sentence ignited an endless rage in my heart. He can scold me, but he must never scold my parents. Chapter 22, Partner. Almost as soon as Suwon had finished speaking, I pounced on him. He didn't have time to react and I threw him onto his seat. Panic and surprise appeared in Suwon's eyes, and he cursed, "Fuck you, you want to fight?" While cursing, he punched me with his fists, but I grabbed his wrists tightly and pressed my arms against his body, freeing one hand to punch him hard. With a scream, his right half of his face immediately swelled up. At this time, I was like a wild animal that had lost its mind. I didn't care about Mr. Wu's reprimand or my father's words before he left. I just knew to use my fists to hit him as hard as I could on his body and face. Suwon was quite stubborn at first. While struggling, he cursed at me. However, after I gave him a few severe beatings, he began to fear and begged for mercy. Begging for mercy was useless. I just wanted to let out the anger that had built up inside me, so my fists were full of strength, and I hit him so hard that he was bruised and swollen, his eyes were filled with stars, blood was dripping from the corners of his mouth, and I only stopped then. I stood up panting, glaring at him and saying, "Watch your mouth. If you tell the homeroom teacher about what happened today, I'll kill you." Suwon was lying on the ground, gasping for breath from the pain, and didn't have the strength to talk to me. I didn't care about him anymore and just got up and left the classroom. I didn't see Suwon in the afternoon class. I guess he was hiding after I beat him up. The thing that worried me didn't happen. It seemed that he was really scared and didn't tell the homeroom teacher about it. My mood improved a lot as a result, and I was able to concentrate much better in class. The third class in the afternoon was gym class, which was also one of the students' favorite classes. The PE teacher is called Wei Yan, and he is a burly man, almost 1.9 meters tall. I consider myself not short, but standing in front of him, I look like a child, not to mention the girls. Despite his appearance, Mr. Wei is actually quite kind. He first made us run 2 laps around the playground, and said that after we finished the exercises for the day, we could play freely. Hearing this, the students were very excited and asked what exercises they were. When Mr. Wei ordered the boys to take out a dozen sponge mats from the gym equipment room, the students understood. This is the rhythm of doing sit-ups. We have practiced it several times since the beginning of the semester, so we knew as soon as we took out the sponge mats. But when I saw the sponge mats, I felt very uncomfortable. Because every time I do sit-ups, the other students have a partner to hold their feet, but because the other students look down on me and don't want to pair up with me, I always have to be the last one to do sit-ups and have to ask Teacher Wei for help. This time, the sit-up exercise was the same as usual. Teacher Wei asked the students to pair up freely, with one person doing the exercise and the other helping to hold the feet. After doing 50 sit-ups, the pair would switch, and the pair that had both members complete 50 sit-ups would be free to move around. The students paired up quickly. I was the only one standing there, feeling very uncomfortable, but there was nothing I could do. "Lu Feng, you still haven't found a partner? I'll help you after they're done." After a few sit-ups, Teacher Wei already knew me, and when she saw me standing there stupidly unable to find a partner, she said indifferently, "Lu Feng, you haven't found a partner yet?" Before I could say anything, I didn't expect someone to gently pull my sleeve at that moment and say, "Lu Feng, let's be partners." It was a nice girl's voice. I froze for a moment, and when I turned around, it was actually Han Xiaomei. She looked at me a little embarrassed, waiting for my answer. Although it is normal for a man and a woman to do push-ups together, and there are already several pairs of men and women doing so, they are all in a relationship after all. And every time I am alone, I never thought that Han Xiaomei would take the initiative to be my partner in front of everyone. I was very excited and looked at Han Xiaomei gratefully, nodded and said yes. Then I heard the whistles of several roommates such as Ma Lin and Qian Kai, who were all smiling ambiguously. However, at the same time, an unharmonious voice entered my ears. "Xiaomei, if you don't want to be my partner, that's fine, but how can you team up with this annoying guy? Am I not as good as him?" The person speaking was Wu Jiajia. Originally, she saw that I had not found a partner and had a gloating expression on her face, but now that Han Xiaomei was willing to be my partner, she suddenly became uneasy and looked at Han Xiaomei with an unhappy expression. "Sorry, Jiajia, I saw that no one wanted to partner with Lu Feng, so I wanted to help him." Han Xiaomei looked apologetic and quickly apologized to Wu Jiajia. It's normal that no one wants to partner with someone like him, and it's not the first or second time. What do you care? Come to me quickly. Wu Jiajia waved at Han Xiaomei from a short distance away. Han Xiaomei suddenly looked embarrassed and looked at me and then at Wu Jiajia. Originally, Han Xiaomei didn't help me. I didn't care, although I felt a little uncomfortable, but I was used to it. But now Wu Jiajia stood up and said this, it made me angry. "It's none of your business who she partners with, just mind your own business, what a bitch." I said coldly to Wu Jiajia. Wu Zhejia's face turned red and white with anger, but in front of Teacher Wei, she couldn't lose her temper, so she just glared at me with gritted teeth, as if she wanted to devour me. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Teacher Wei spoke up and said that since Han Xiaomei already wanted to be my partner, then that was the combination, and then ordered the students to sit up. Since Teacher Wei had said so, Wu Zhejia didn't dare say anything else, but her expression was very unpleasant, and her eyes looked at me with hatred. I didn't care about her and asked Han Xiaomei who would do the sit-ups first. You go first. I could tell that Han Xiaomei was still upset about angering Wu Zhejia, and she didn't come back to the present until I asked her. I lay on the sponge mat, put my hands behind my head, and started doing sit-ups. But because I'm tall and Han Xiaomei is less than 1.6 meters tall, her small hands couldn't hold my legs down, so in the end she had no choice but to sit on my feet to prevent them from moving around. Her sitting position was stable, but I was not calm at all. Han Xiaomei sat on my feet, and the plump, soft, and elastic touch made me feel wonderful. With the ups and downs of the movement, my feet felt like they were being massaged by Han Xiaomei. Needless to say, it was very comfortable, and it made me feel hot and bothered, and I couldn't help but get an erection. This reaction was hard to detect when I sat up, but when I lay back down, the effect was much more obvious, as if I had held up a small umbrella. Han Xiaomei probably also noticed what was going on, and couldn't help blushing. She was embarrassed and wanted to stand up, but I hadn't finished yet, so she had to continue sitting with me, only turning her gaze away and not daring to look. When I finished and it was her turn, the situation became even more awkward. Han Xiaomei didn't care what class she was in today at all, and she actually wore a short floral dress. When she lay down, she had to try hard to pull the hem of the dress up to her knees to prevent any exposure. Even so, I was still able to admire the two pink, smooth calves from up close, which was very attractive. But when it came time to actually do the sit-ups, I had to put my hands behind my head, which caused the hem of the skirt to slide down involuntarily, revealing two round, snow-white thighs. Han Xiaomei blushed with embarrassment. She hadn't thought about this problem when she was helping me, but now, when it came time to actually practice, the embarrassment came out in full force. She looked all twisted up, did two sit-ups, the movements were very unstandard, and I almost saw the view inside her skirt. I also felt a little embarrassed, so I took off my jacket and let her cover her legs, which prevented the view from being exposed. After I finished, Teacher Wei announced that we were dismissed. Han Xiaomei returned my clothes to me, whispered a thank you, and left quickly. When she left, her pretty face was as red as two ripe red apples, which was very cute. Afterwards, the students went to play their favorite activities, basketball, football, or if they didn't want to, they went back to the classroom to do their homework. I didn't go back to the classroom, and I didn't want to play with the other students, so I played on the horizontal bar alone for a while. But my mind was full of the scene just now when I cooperated with Han Xiaomei to do sit-ups, and a strange feeling arose in my heart. Just as I was racking my brains, a voice sounded in my ear, "You little brat, I told you not to mess with my girlfriend, did you ignore me?" Hearing this familiar voice, my face changed slightly. I looked up and saw Li Weiqiao walking towards me with three tall boys. Chapter 23, Calling for Help. I knew the three guys Li Weiqiao was with, they were the ones who beat me up at the school gate yesterday. Not only that, but Wu Zhejia was standing next to him. Wu Zhejia looked at me with a smug expression and sneered, "Lu Feng, what did you just call me in front of your classmates? If you're so capable, then call me that again." I was already angry when I saw Li Weiqiao and the others, but I never imagined that it was Wu Zhejia who called them over to get back at me. It really made me so angry that I couldn't control my emotions. "It's your own fault, so what if I curse you? If you're so capable, tell them to come and beat me up," I said loudly. Although I wasn't afraid of Li Weiqiao, he was with four others, and I was no match for them at all. After I finished speaking, I quickly added, "Don't do anything stupid, this is a PE lesson, and Teacher Wei is still over there." I yelled so that he heard me. Originally, Li Weiqiao and his three friends saw that I was scolding Wu Zhejia again and wanted to take action against me, but after hearing this, they all stopped and looked at me with bad expressions on their faces. "You brat, if you're so capable, don't go back to the dorm after school, or I'll beat you to death." Li Weiqiao cursed, then smiled and said to Wu Zhejia, "Zhejia, it's not a good time to fight during class, I'll definitely help you teach him a lesson after school." Although Wu Zhejia looked very unwilling, she finally nodded and ignored Li Weiqiao. She gave me a fierce look and left on her own. Li Weiqiao watched Wu Zhejia leave with a smile on his face, and he didn't forget to call out, "Zhejia, I'll go find you after evening study." After Wu Zhejia left, Li Weiqiao's attention returned to me, and he said viciously, "Kid, wait for a beating after school." After saying that, he left with the three others. Looking at the four of them walking away, I felt relieved, but I couldn't be happy. From the way Li Weiqiao spoke, I could tell that I was in for another beating. I hated him with a passion. If we were to fight one-on-one, Li Weiqiao wouldn't necessarily be my match, but he could get others to beat me up with him, and I didn't have many friends around me. It was almost impossible to resist. Unless I don't go back to the dorm after school, but what can I do if I don't go back to the dorm? I can hide for a while, but I can't hide forever. Just as I was thinking all kinds of nonsense, I didn't expect Han Xiaomei to come over. At this time, her face looked much better, and it seemed that she had already let go of the embarrassing scene of the sit-ups earlier. However, there was a worried look in her eyes, and she asked me, what was the matter with those people from Li Weiqiao just now? I saw Wu Jejia still with them. Did they want to beat you again? I could only smile bitterly and reply, yes, because just now when I was doing sit-ups, I scolded Wu Jejia, and she held a grudge against me. She called over Li Weiqiao and his friends again and said that they wanted to beat me up after school. What should I do? Han Xiaomei's obvious expression of anxiety was, why don't I report it to the homeroom teacher and ask Teacher Wu to help you? What use is Teacher Wu? They are students from another class. Even if they heed the warning and don't beat me up after school, they might still come after me after evening study. I sighed, feeling quite useless. This was the second time Li Weiqiao had wanted to beat me up, but I couldn't muster the slightest bit of fighting spirit. I could only bemoan my fate. Then I'll go find Wu Jejia. After all, she and I are good sisters. I'll ask her to let you go, so that Li Weiqiao and the others won't do it. Han Xiaomei said, and she was about to go find Wu Jejia. I couldn't stop her, and I could only let her go. Han Xiaomei's actions touched me deeply. At school, basically all the students and teachers looked down on me, but Han Xiaomei was the only one who treated me as a friend and even worried about me getting beaten up. I thought to myself that no matter if she could convince Wu Jejia or not, when I had the money, I would definitely treat her to a meal out to show my appreciation. Han Xiaomei left, and I played on the parallel bars for a while longer, but I found it boring, so I prepared to go back to the classroom. Unexpectedly, before I even entered the classroom, I heard a conversation between two girls coming from the classroom. Xiaomei, I'm asking if you've fallen for that loser. Look at how pathetic he is, I don't know what you like about him. The voice was sharp and mean, with a hint of sarcasm, and it was obvious that it was Wu Jejia's voice. Jejia, don't talk nonsense, I just feel a bit sorry for Lu Feng and want to help him. Why do you guys keep bullying him? He hasn't offended you, has he? Han Xiaomei argued. What if I'm not offended? I just don't like him. Look at his poor appearance, and he argues with me all the time. It's a good thing Li Weiqiao and the others beat him up. Wu Jejia sneered, and then continued, Xiaomei, we're best friends, and I don't want you to ruin our friendship because of Lu Feng. You don't need to say anything else. Then there was no sound of the two girls in the classroom, only the sound of some other scattered girls' discussions. Although Han Xiaomei failed to convince Wu Jejia, I was already very grateful to her. On the contrary, Wu Jejia actually called me trash and said I was poor and shabby. If I hadn't seen that she was a woman, I would have rushed into the classroom and beaten her up. I walked into the classroom with a cold face. The classroom was full of girls, and when Wu Jejia and Han Xiaomei saw me, they both froze for a moment. Then Wu Jejia sneered, Lu Feng, you let a woman beg for you, are you still a man? You have to try it to know if you are a man, I retorted coldly. Wu Jejia froze for a moment, and then she reacted, her eyes immediately showing hatred, as she bit her teeth and said, Lu Feng, I see you're happy now, but you won't be laughing after school. After she finished, she ignored me and got up and walked out of the classroom. After Wu Jejia left, Han Xiaomei came over and said apologetically, Lu Feng, I'm really sorry, I couldn't help you. It's okay, you've helped me a lot. I said thank you to Wu Jejia again before returning to my seat. I pondered in my heart, if it really doesn't work, I'll go find Qin Feiyang. After all, I did help him last time, and I don't think he'll refuse if I ask him to help me deal with Li Weiqiao. I hesitated for a long time, but finally decided to go find him. As soon as PE class was over, I left the classroom immediately and walked towards the eastern end of the corridor. There were 8 classes in the first year of high school, and Qin Feiyang was a student in class 8. I was a little anxious, after all, this was the first time I had asked someone for help, and he was also a well-known bully in the first year of high school, so I didn't know if Qin Feiyang would agree. Before I reached class 8, I saw a few unruly students smoking in the doorway of class 8, smoking and laughing while they smoked, looking extremely dashing. I was a little nervous. I had heard that class 8 was the most chaotic class in the first year, with the most unruly students. Just the way they stood there exuding an air of power made me want to back down. But in order to avoid being beaten up by Li Weiqiao and the others, I gritted my teeth and walked over. I kept my head down, pretending not to see them, and thought about going to the front of the classroom to find Qin Feiyang, but a few of the unruly students had obviously set their sights on me. One of the boys with pimples on his face stopped me and asked, "Hey, which class are you in? What do you want?" "I'm looking for Qin Feiyang." I mustered up the courage to say. "You're looking for Yan? Which class are you in and what's your name?" A sneer of contempt appeared at the corner of the pimple's mouth as he asked. "My name is Lu Feng. I need to see him about something." I was a little angry at the pimple's attitude. What did it matter to him why I was looking for Qin Feiyang? But I didn't dare offend them, so I just answered like this. "Just tell us what's up, and we'll tell Yang for you." Acme finished taking the last drag of his cigarette and threw the butt away, saying, "I want to talk to him." I stubbornly said, "Okay, you guys stop teasing this student, you've made him blush." One of the thin, tall boys with glasses came to my rescue, saying, "I'm sorry, this student, Yang, hasn't been at school all afternoon, I don't know where he went." Seeing that the bespectacled boy didn't seem to be lying, my heart sank. I nodded with some disappointment, said thank you and turned away. As for what the bully said next, I couldn't care less. Back in the classroom, I was so extremely uneasy that I didn't hear a word in the last class of the afternoon. School was over, and I had no intention of going back to the dormitory. I just wanted to hide for a while. After eating dinner in the cafeteria, I planned to go back to the classroom. But I didn't know that as soon as I left the cafeteria, I heard someone calling me from behind. "Little brat, you stop right there." The one speaking was Li Weiqiao, followed by his 3 lackeys. My face suddenly changed, and without saying a word, I started running. Chapter 24, Losing an Arm. I panicked and ran in any direction I saw, not caring about being a coward. It didn't matter if I got caught, it would be worthless if I got beaten up. But I was simply not as fast as them. One of them, a tall guy at 1.9 meters, was running really fast. I hadn't even escaped 50 meters before they caught me. The tall guy grabbed me by the collar and pushed me down to the edge of the flower bed in one go, while Li Weiqiao surrounded me with the other 2, leaving me nowhere to hide. "Kid, weren't you quite the show-off in gym class? If you're so good, try acting like one now," Li Weiqiao said coldly. "Li Weiqiao, don't go too far." I got up, patted the dust off myself, and said angrily. As soon as I finished speaking, Li Weiqiao gave me a kick, sending me tumbling to the ground. Although the kick didn't hurt much, it made me furious. I cursed and got up, pouncing on Li Weiqiao, only to be blocked by 2 of his friends, who started to punch and kick me. Li Weiqiao and another companion also joined the fight. The 4 of them joined forces and beat me until I fell to the ground and curled up, unable to fight back at all. Every time a fist or kick hit me, my hatred for Li Weiqiao deepened by the second. My anger continued to build, and after they had hit me more than 10 times, I finally found an opportunity. I saw Li Weiqiao's kicking leg coming and grabbed it, then pulled it upwards with all my strength. Li Weiqiao let out a scream and fell next to me. Before he could get up, I pounced on him like a beast and pounded my fists into his body and face. The other 3 boys tried to pull me off, but they couldn't, so they just kicked and hit me as hard as they could. But I didn't care. At that moment, my eyes were red and my head was filled with rage. I had only one thought in my mind: I had to beat Li Weiqiao to death. Whenever the 3 boys hit me, I would make Li Weiqiao pay back double. I only hit him until he was crying and cursing, and he begged the 3 boys to drag me away from him with a tearful voice. After all, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. I took a lot of hits on my back and head, and I was dizzy and my whole body ached. Finally, I couldn't hold on anymore, and they kicked me off Li Weiqiao's body and I fell to the ground. At this point, Li Weiqiao was already bruised and bloody, with blood pouring from his nose. He got up and, without bothering to wipe the blood away, angrily shouted at his 3 companions, "You 3 are shit. 3 of you can't even deal with one piece of trash. What a waste." The tall boy said apologetically, "No, Brother Xiao, just now this kid was like a wild buffalo that wouldn't die, we couldn't even pull him away." The other 2 agreed. Li Weiqiao didn't say anything more, and with a frightened look at me, his eyes then flashed with a cold chill, giving me an instant bad feeling. "You guys crippled this kid's arm." Anger had overwhelmed Li Weiqiao's reason, and he glared at me, cursing. Hearing this, the 3 companions were immediately startled. "Brother Xiao, this is not good. If the homeroom teacher finds out, we're finished." I told you to do it, so why are you talking so much nonsense? If something goes wrong, I'll take the blame, so what's there to be afraid of? Li Weiqiao said viciously. After hearing Li Weiqiao's words, the three companions' eyes hardened, and they looked at me with cold, menacing stares. At this moment, my heart sank to the bottom of the abyss. This time, Li Weiqiao was really going to get serious. I wanted to escape, but I was sore all over and didn't have the strength to get up, so I could only watch as the four of them surrounded me again. Kid, I'm sorry, but if you want to blame someone, blame your brother for angering us. The tall boy said this and picked up a brick by the flower bed, ready to smash it at my wrist joint. Despair welled up in my heart, and I secretly cried out, "It's over." However, just then, a crisp female voice suddenly rang out, "Teacher Wu, it's them fighting here." Hearing this voice, Li Weiqiao and the others subconsciously looked towards the girl who spoke. The person who came was Han Xiaomei. She was not far away, and was waving her hand behind the flower bed. From what she said just now, it seemed that she was followed by the homeroom teacher Wu Gang. I guess Li Weiqiao and the others guessed this as well. After seeing her, Li Weiqiao angrily scolded me, "You little brat, you actually called the teacher here. You just wait, I won't let you off next time." After scolding me, Li Weiqiao led the three of them and fled in a panic. At this time, Han Xiaomei walked over to me, her eyes filled with concern. She helped me up and asked nervously, "Lu Feng, are you okay?" I gasped in pain. I had already been beaten up yesterday, and the old and new injuries were intertwined. It would be false to say I was okay. With a wry smile, I said, "Thank you so much. If you hadn't arrived in time, I might have lost an arm." "Hey, where is Teacher Wu? Did you call him?" "There is no such thing as Teacher Wu. I just saw you get beaten and came up with this idea to scare Li Weiqiao and the others on purpose. I didn't expect it to really scare them off." Han Xiaomei said and helped me to the infirmary. My body was in so much pain that I didn't resist, but in my heart, I looked at Han Xiaomei in front of me even higher. Don't look at her, she seems petite and weak, but I didn't expect that she could come up with such an idea to scare off Li Weiqiao and the others at a critical moment. Han Xiaomei helped me to the infirmary, and I put my hand on her shoulder. I felt her round and small shoulders, and although there was a layer of clothing between us, I could still feel the warm, soft, and elastic skin. Leaning so close to her, I could even smell the faint fragrance of a virgin on her body. The pain in my body didn't feel so heavy anymore, and instead I felt a feeling of heat in my lower abdomen. When we arrived at the infirmary, the middle-aged doctor looked at the places I had been beaten and said it was fine, just infected wounds. He prescribed some disinfectant and anti-inflammatory ointment. The medicine cost was not expensive, only 5 yuan, which I could save by skipping a meal. Before leaving, I thanked the doctor, and the middle-aged doctor laughed and said to be careful in the future, don't keep fighting at school, or you'll get expelled. I think he was referring to the fact that I had only been to the infirmary the previous week, and had been beaten up again in just 1 week. This was between Li Weiqiao and me, and I didn't want to explain it to the doctor. So I left the infirmary with Han Xiaomei. When she helped me to the dormitory, it was already time for evening study. She told me to rest well, and asked me to ask the class teacher for leave. I became a little anxious when I heard this. If the class teacher found out that I had fought with someone again, it would be terrible. Han Xiaomei seemed to sense my doubts and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I'll just tell Teacher Wu that you're sick with a cold and won't be attending evening study sessions tonight." Hearing this, I felt relieved and thanked her again. Han Xiaomei gave a faint smile and said that it was getting late and she had to hurry to attend evening study sessions as well. After Han Xiaomei left, I was the only one left in the dormitory, and I couldn't fall asleep at all as I lay in bed. I sniffed my hands, which still retained the fragrance of Han Xiaomei's body, and my heart fluttered, and I couldn't help but fantasize. Although Han Xiaomei was very nice to me, I knew that it was all because she felt bad about what she had done to her best friend Wu Jejia, and she felt very sympathetic towards my situation, so she helped me. I guessed that she didn't really have any other feelings for me. Thinking about this, I couldn't help but think of Miss Xiao again. I did hate and detest Miss Xiao before, but after taking advantage of her a few times, I became deeply infatuated with her body and instead felt an inexplicable fondness for her. Although Miss Xiao's attitude towards me remained cold, I was already very satisfied with being able to take advantage of her from time to time. Thinking about this, I sent Miss Xiao a text message, asking if she was free tomorrow night. After waiting for a long time, I heard a knock on the door instead of a reply. It was time for evening study, so the person knocking on the door was either the old dormitory manager or someone else. But the old dormitory manager wouldn't come to the dormitory specifically to knock on the door, so could it be that Teacher Wu had come to visit me? Thinking about this, I became nervous. If he found out that I was lying to him and I had only called in sick because I had been beaten, then I would be in trouble. I quickly sat up in bed, quickly got dressed, and asked at the same time, "Who is it?" "It's me, Xueqing. I heard you were sick, so I came to see you." What no one expected was Xueqing's voice actually ringing outside. Chapter 25, Revenge. Hearing his voice, I let out a sigh of relief. Luckily it wasn't Teacher Wu, but I was quite puzzled in my heart. Xueqing and I had just met, so why would he come to my dormitory at this time? I got up and slowly walked over to open the door. Xueqing was standing right outside the door, just as his name suggested, looking very spirited. He took a good look at me and then said with a smile, "I thought you were really sick, but it turns out you just wanted to avoid evening study hall." "Not bad, not bad." I invited him in and curiously asked him why he had come to see me. Xueqing entered the dormitory and acted as if he were at home, casually sitting on the bed opposite Marin's and offering me a cigarette. I was annoyed, so I didn't bother to be polite. After I took the cigarette, I didn't have a lighter, so Xueqing personally lit it for me. The two of them smoked in the small dormitory. Xueqing then explained slowly, "I heard from Li Fei that you went to class this afternoon and you looked for me." "I'm sorry, I was busy and wasn't at school this afternoon. I just got back a little while ago, and then went to your class to look for you. I heard a little girl say that you were sick and lying in the dormitory, so I came here to find you." After explaining, Xueqing asked me what I wanted. Although this matter was over, I knew that my matter with Li Weiqiao was not yet over. After hesitating for a moment, I told him about the beating I had just received. Xueqing immediately guessed the reason I had come to see him, apologized to me, and then his eyes flashed with a cold light as he said coldly, "This Li Weiqiao really thinks he's someone. Lu Feng, don't worry, you helped me out so much this morning, I definitely won't ignore your matter. After the evening study session, you come with me and I'll help you teach that son of a bitch a lesson." I was overjoyed when I got a positive reply from Xueqing, and I quickly thanked him. Xueqing waved his hand and said not to be polite, that this was what he should do, and asked me how my injury was. I said it was okay, just a superficial wound, and it would probably heal in a few days. He stayed in my dormitory for a few minutes and said he would come find me after night study hall, and I nodded happily. After Xueqing left, I was in a great mood. Xueqing is a notorious troublemaker in the senior grade. I saw the ferocity with which he lectured the fat boy in the morning. With him standing up for me, I believe I will soon be able to take my revenge. I lay back on the bed. With Li Weiqiao's situation secured, my thoughts turned to Teacher Xiao again. I had sent a text message to Teacher Xiao before Xueqing arrived, but after all this time, she still hadn't replied. I couldn't hold back any longer, so I sent her another message, asking what Teacher Xiao was doing. But after waiting for a long time, there was still no reply. I had no choice but to go to sleep. I don't know how long I slept for, but I heard Xiankai calling my name in a daze, brother phone, wake up, look who's here." I woke up with a start and saw Xiankai and the others standing by the bed, as well as Xueqing and two other boys from another class. I knew these two guys, they were the pimply-faced boy and the tall one with glasses who had stopped me in Xueqing's class the last time. I immediately sat up in bed, a little surprised, and said, "Why did you come so soon?" Xueqing suddenly laughed, "Buddy, I think you're confused from sleep, because evening class has already ended." Hearing this, I realized that Xiankai, Ma Lin, and the other 6 roommates were in the dormitory, which meant that class had ended. However, at this time, the way my roommates looked at me was a little different, full of weirdness and surprise. I could tell from the way they were staring at me with wide eyes, and I had no idea what they were thinking. Let me introduce you to these two. They are my younger brothers, Li Fei and He Xiaoyu. After introducing the pimple-faced and bespectacled guy, Xueqing asked, "Lu Feng, can you get up? If so, I'll take you to beat up Li Weiqiao. If not, just lie down and we'll take revenge for you." Although my body still hurt, I immediately perked up when I heard that I would be beating up Li Weiqiao. I nodded vigorously and said, "I can get up." I quickly got dressed and said with some excitement, "Let's go." Xueqing gave a slight smile and led the two younger guys and me out of the dormitory. But before we left, I caught a glimpse in the corner of my eye and saw that Xiankai and the others all looked stunned. I guess they didn't expect that Xueqing, the famous senior, would actually seek me out, a poor student with few friends, and help me deal with Li Weiqiao. But I couldn't care less about what they were thinking now, and I followed Xueqing straight to Li Weiqiao's dormitory. Xiankai and the others were stunned for a few seconds, but then they followed Chi, all of them with excitement written on their faces, as if they were waiting for a good show. Li Weichao's dormitory was on the second floor near the stairs. Xiao had investigated it beforehand, so we found Li Weichao's dormitory without much difficulty. At this time, his dormitory door was closed, but we could hear the sound of laughter and conversation inside. We stood in front of the dormitory door, and Li Fei knocked on the door first. After waiting for a long time, no one opened the door. It seemed that the people inside the dormitory were having a good time chatting and didn't hear the knocking at all. Li Fei snorted and slammed his foot hard on the door. The door panel shook, but fortunately it was quite sturdy and was not kicked in. However, it did wake up the people inside the dormitory. "Fuck you, who is it that is kicking the door around outside?" A loud curse came from inside. The voice sounded familiar, but it wasn't Li Weichao's. Thinking that I would soon be able to avenge my previous humiliation, I couldn't help but clench my fists in excitement, my face flushed with excitement. It seemed that he could tell my anger. Qin Feiyang had a composed expression on his face, and he smiled, patted my shoulder and gestured for me to calm down for the time being. In a few seconds, the door opened, and it was the tall guy who had beaten me with Li Weichao who opened the door. I could see that he was shirtless, wearing a pair of baggy pants and holding a cigarette in his mouth. He cursed and said, "You motherfuckers want to find." Die before he could finish, and then he saw Qin Feiyang and the other two. His face suddenly changed, and his voice came to an abrupt end. Then he put on a smile and asked, "Yang, why are you here? Come in and sit down. Do you know him?" Qin Feiyang snorted, and directly pulled me out. The tall guy's attention had been focused on Qin Feiyang, and it wasn't until Qin Feiyang pulled me out that he saw me. His face changed again. "It's you." With Qin Feiyang backing me up, I had no qualms at this point, and I went up and kicked him hard in the stomach. The tall guy let out a scream and fell into the dormitory. Qin Feiyang, the tall guy, and I strode into the dormitory together, leaving my roommates, including Qian Kai, outside watching the show. The dormitory was in chaos. There were 5 or 6 people inside, all of them with cigarettes in their mouths. When the tall guy fell in, their faces all changed. They all showed angry expressions, glaring at me fiercely, ready to fight at any time. However, when they saw Qin Feiyang, who had just followed me in, their expressions suddenly stiffened. They all put down their angry expressions, replaced by surprise and fear. I scanned the dormitory with my eyes, and the 3 people who had beaten me with Li Weichao were all there, except for Li Weichao himself. "Where is Li Weichao?" I stared at the tall man on the ground and asked coldly. The tall man got up from the ground, his face full of anger, but he didn't dare to act, just covering his stomach and glaring at me viciously without answering. Qin Feiyang said nothing and slapped him in the face. With a crisp sound, he yelled, "Are you deaf? My friend asked you a question." I was quite touched when Qin Feiyang called me his friend. I had never had many friends growing up, and Qin Feiyang was a notorious troublemaker in the upper grades. I was surprised that he considered me a friend, even though he was just saying it. At this time, the tall guy who had just been slapped covered half his face and answered honestly, "Brother Xiao went to buy instant noodles and will be back soon." Qin Feiyang nodded and asked me again, "Lu Feng, apart from Li Weichao, who else hit you? Point them out and we'll deal with them later." Although I knew that Qin Feiyang was awesome, I still didn't expect him to have such a strong deterrent effect. There were only 4 of us, but there were 6 of them in their dormitory. They had the advantage in numbers, but they didn't dare to do anything. I felt pretty good, and my anger had subsided quite a bit. I reached out and pointed out all 3 of the people who had beaten me. Except for the tall guy who had just been kicked, the other 2 people obviously felt their bodies tremble a little as they followed the movement of my fingers, and their faces turned pale. Qin Feiyang walked up and first gave one person a slap in the face, snorting, "How dare you bully my friends, you're looking for death." Just as he was saying this, a familiar voice suddenly sounded outside the dormitory. "What are you all doing gathered at the door of my dormitory? Do you want to eat shit? Get the hell out of my way." Hearing this voice, the blood in my body suddenly rushed to my head, and my whole body became a little hideous. The one speaking was no one else but Li Weichao. Chapter 26, Ventilation. Li Weichao had already seen him push open the door and enter while he was yelling at me. However, as soon as he entered the dormitory, Li Weichao was dumbfounded. He saw Qin Feiyang and I looking at him coldly, while everyone else in the dormitory was cowering next to their own beds. What's going on? Li Weichao naturally knew Qin Feiyang, but he probably didn't react. He didn't know if Qin Feiyang had come to the dormitory with me, and he didn't know about our relationship. Li Weichao, don't think that just because you hang around with Wang Jun that you're something. You've beaten up my friends time and time again. Tell me, What are you going to do about this? Xin Feiyang took out a pack of cigarettes and gave one to each of Li Fei, He Xiaoyu, and me, then lit one up for himself, exhaling a ring of smoke as he looked calmly at Li Weiqiao. Li Weiqiao kept his head down, and I couldn't see his expression, but I could clearly see his hands, which were hanging naturally, clenched tightly, as if he was very dissatisfied. Immediately afterwards, Li Weiqiao looked up, revealing a smile of ingratiation. Yang, I'm sorry, I really didn't know that Lu Feng was your brother, so how about I apologize to Brother Feng, is that okay? Apologize? Hearing this, Xin Feiyang's mouth revealed a slight sneer, and he asked me, Lu Feng, do you want to? My face grew dark, and my heart was filled with hatred and anger, so I simply couldn't smile. Without answering Xin Feiyang's words, I walked straight up to Li Weiqiao. Li Weiqiao saw that I looked a bit strange and subconsciously took a step back, nervously asking, What do you want? I didn't say a word, and instead gave a powerful answer with a kick to Li Weiqiao's stomach. Li Weiqiao was kicked backwards a few steps, hitting the wall behind him. He covered his stomach in pain, but his eyes flashed with anger and unwillingness. Xin Feiyang nodded with a smile, as if he really appreciated my kick, and then waved his hand, signaling Li Fei and He Xiaoyu to get started as well, to finish quickly. Li Fei grinned and walked straight up to one of the guys I had just pointed out, while He Xiaoyu, with a calm face, adjusted his glasses and dealt with the other guy. Xin Feiyang was responsible for teaching the tall guy a lesson. The three of them started fighting almost at the same time, and the three people being beaten didn't dare to fight back, and the others in the dormitory didn't dare to stop or help either. When I saw Xin Feiyang and the other two start fighting, I became even more rude. Before Li Weiqiao could catch his breath, I rushed up and kicked him hard in the shin with both feet. Li Weiqiao's footing became unstable and he fell to the ground. Then I used my fists and feet to beat Li Weiqiao mercilessly, until he curled up in the corner, hugging his head and groaning miserably from time to time. We only stopped when Marin outside the door reminded us that the dormitory old man was patrolling. However, at this time, Li Weiqiao had been beaten beyond recognition, with a swollen and bruised face, footprints all over his body, and blood dripping from his nose. He was huddled in the corner, motionless. The one I hated the most was the guy Li Fei had taught a lesson to. He was even more miserable than the other three. I didn't know what Li Fei had hit him with, but his face was covered in blood and it looked quite scary. However, Li Fei was smiling nonchalantly, with a cigarette in his mouth that he had just lit. Xin Feiyang also glanced over, his face still calm, and asked me with a smile, Lu Feng, are you satisfied now? I nodded, my fists red from punching, and thanked him again. He patted my shoulder, and the four of us left their dormitory together. Until we left, the others in the dormitory still didn't dare to move, not even having the courage to go up and help the four people with Li Weiqiao. We left Li Weiqiao's dormitory and stood on the second floor, and sure enough, we saw the old dormitory manager patrolling downstairs with a flashlight. Brother, next time if you have any problems, just let me know, don't be polite, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to the dormitory first. After saying that, he didn't give me the chance to say anything else, and Xin Feiyang took Li Fei and He Xiaoyu and left directly. I was afraid of being discovered by the old dorm manager, so I returned to the dorm with Qian Kai and the others. Once I returned to the dorm, all 7 roommates surrounded me, looking extremely excited and asking me questions. Brother Feng, I didn't realize you knew Xin Feiyang, that's awesome. Skinny Monkey Ma Lin praised. Yes, Xin Feiyang is a well-known bully in the upper grades, and he still calls you brother, Brother Feng. I realize we all misjudged you. Qian Kai also laughed. Since you know this awesome friend, Brother Feng, you have to look after us in the future. The other roommates chimed in. Just as they were talking, the lights went out in the dormitory. But that didn't dampen their enthusiasm. They called Feng brother from left and right, and they were extraordinarily close. If I had made them take me seriously by beating Li Weiqiao in the cafeteria last time, then Qian Kai and the others were now very envious and admiring of me. I felt so good when they praised me so much. Even if I'm not a strong person, having Xin Feiyang as a backer still feels pretty good. Just now in Li Weiqiao's dormitory, Xin Feiyang slapped the tall guy, and no one dared to say a word when he spoke or acted. I was deeply impressed by his coolness and arrogance, and I even started to admire Xin Feiyang a little. I couldn't help but start daydreaming in my heart, when, if I can also be as capable as Xin Feiyang, the students at school will definitely look at me differently. Of course, I don't know how to change, and I'm still thinking that Xin Feiyang has helped me a lot this time. Should I buy a pack of cigarettes to thank him tomorrow? I chatted with Qian Kai and the others until 2 a.m., until I was too sleepy to continue, and I fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, I went to morning study with Qian Kai and the others. As soon as I arrived in the classroom, Chen Kai and the others, as if they were afraid that the world was not in chaos, helped me spread the word everywhere that Qin Feiyang and I were good friends and what happened last night. The other students were all extremely surprised when they heard this, and they looked at me differently. Su Wen and Wu Jia had the biggest reactions. Su Wen was injured by me yesterday and didn't show up for the whole afternoon. I saw him as soon as I entered the classroom in the morning, with several band-aids on his face, some places still a little red and swollen, looking particularly miserable. He saw that my eyes were full of hatred, but after hearing from Chen Kai about Qin Feiyang helping me take revenge, he looked a little scared and didn't dare to look at me again. Wu Jia, on the other hand, looked at me with a completely different expression. She didn't seem to believe me at all, and looked at me with a mocking expression, sarcastically saying, "Lu Feng, you say you know Qin Feiyang, and that he even helped you teach Li Weiqiao a lesson. Ah, that's really funny. How can someone like you even know Qin Feiyang? What a big shot. I guess you got beaten up yesterday and are looking for an excuse to save face. Don't worry, as soon as morning study is over, I'll go ask Li Weiqiao, and then we'll see how I expose your lie." I rolled my eyes. There was no need to explain to an annoying girl like Wu Jia. After the end of morning study, Wu Jia really left the classroom and walked towards Li Weiqiao's class, as if to confirm what had happened. I sneered inwardly and went to breakfast with Qian Kai and the others. Since what happened last night, my 7 roommates have been surrounding me, even at breakfast. It seems that they are deliberately trying to get on my good side, and Qian Kai even invited me to eat breakfast. As for Marin and the others, they are not as lucky. After breakfast, we went to morning reading class together. Unexpectedly, we met teacher Xiao on the way. She was wearing a red slim-fit dress today, which tightly wrapped her curvy figure, with big breasts and a perky butt. Her smooth legs wrapped in flesh-colored stockings looked very sexy. Carrying a shoulder bag, she was stepping on 10-centimeter black open-back high heels and walking quickly towards the teaching building, seemingly not paying attention to us. "It's teacher Xiao, let's hurry into the classroom." When they saw Xiao Xueqing, Chen Kai and the others' faces changed. Xiao Xueqing's arrogance and coldness were notorious at school, and Chen Kai and the others were afraid to see her. But I was still bothered by the fact that she hadn't replied to my message last night. I told Chen Kai and the others to go back to the classroom first, saying that I had something to do and I could go up later. My roommates didn't think much of it and left. After they had gone far away, I immediately followed Xiao Xueqing. I almost ran all the way to catch up with her. Xiao Xueqing had not yet reacted to what was going on when I grabbed her slender, white arm. Chapter 27, Refusal. My sudden attack took teacher Xiao by surprise, but when she saw it was me, her expression quickly calmed down, and her pretty face showed an expression of disgust as she said, "Lu Feng, what do you want? This is the school, don't go too far." While saying this, she looked left and right, trying to shake off my hand, probably afraid of being seen by others. "I want to talk to teacher Xiao." I grabbed her hand and refused to let go, saying obstinately, "Let go of me first." Xiao Xueqing hissed. "Unless you are willing to talk to me," I said. Xiao Xueqing glared at me hatefully, and finally nodded. I then let go of her hand and asked her why she didn't reply to my message last night. Xiao Xueqing looked around and said to me, "Let's not talk here, it's not good if someone sees us." So, we hid behind the teaching building and I once again questioned her about the message. "I fell asleep last night, I didn't see it," Xiao Xueqing said perfunctorily. "Are you free today?" I continued. "Not today." Xiao Xueqing decisively refused without a moment's hesitation. I was a little angry, but I held back and asked again, "What about tomorrow?" "We'll see," Xiao Xueqing said impatiently. "Are you doing this on purpose?" I was really angry and grabbed Xiao Xueqing's arm again. "Let go of me, don't touch me." Xiao Xueqing tried to push me away, but she wasn't as strong as me, and instead of pushing her away, I was so angry that I embraced her in my arms. I held her tightly, and once again I felt the softness of her delicate body and the intoxicating fragrance. My heart fluttered, and I couldn't help but start touching her again. Xiao Xueqing tried to resist, but I held her tightly, and she couldn't break free at all. She could only say anxiously, "No, not here. She'll find out." At this moment, my anger and lust were both aroused by her, so I didn't care what she said. One hand was already acting improperly, taking advantage of her as much as I could. After a few moments, Xiao Xueqing responded. Her originally cold and pretty face seemed to be melted by the fire, but instead it was covered in a seductive blush. Her eyes were confused, her lips pursed, and she began to respond to my passion. The way she behaved made me even more unable to bear it. I was about to take the final step when I suddenly heard the voices of students talking around the corner. The voice was not loud, but Xueqing and I were both startled, and our bodies suddenly became stiff, subconsciously stopping our movements. Fortunately, the student who spoke did not come to the back of the teaching building, otherwise she would have discovered the shameful thing that Miss Xiao and I were doing. Accompanied by the sound of footsteps, the voice became farther and farther away, and both of us let out a sigh of relief. Xueqing came back to her senses, pushed me away angrily, and said, "Why do you always do this every time?" "It was because you forced me to." I could still smell her body on my hands, feeling a little disappointed. Xueqing was too angry to speak, and said coldly, "Don't mess around on campus in the future. I really have something to do and don't have time these 2 days. I'll contact you in a few days. Don't worry, I want to get rid of you as soon as possible too." After she finished speaking, she didn't wait for me to say anything. Xueqing straightened her clothes and quickly left. I looked at her departing back and felt quite depressed. It wasn't until she had left for a while that I came out from behind the teaching building and returned to the classroom. Xiao and the others saw that I didn't look too good and all came over to ask me what I had just been doing. I didn't bother to pay them any mind and sent them back to their own places. I picked up my textbook and looked at it absent-mindedly. It wasn't until the end of the morning reading class that my mood improved slightly. However, what surprised me was that my deskmate Wu Jia didn't harass me all morning, but instead, she obediently shrank into her own seat. I remembered that she had gone to deliberately ask Li Weiqiao about me when morning study was over, so I sneered, "Hey, bitch, didn't you just ask Li Weiqiao about me? How did it go?" Hearing this, Wu Jia stared at me full of shame and anger, but she couldn't speak to refute, as she had probably already gotten the answer she most didn't want to hear. No wonder, during morning study she didn't believe what Xiao and the others said at all, thinking that I was lying to my classmates to save face. Now that she has got the correct answer, the embarrassment can be imagined. "Lu Feng, don't think that just because Qin Feiyang is backing you up, you're something. Just you wait, I'm definitely not going to let you off lightly," Wu Jia said, red-faced and furious. Looking at her clenched teeth, I suddenly realized that this woman was really bad. I didn't provoke her, but because she didn't like me, she deliberately messed with me. What a snake-hearted woman. I decided to ask the homeroom teacher to change my seat so that I could stay away from this bitch. I used the time between classes and a study session to write the self-reflection that Ms. Wu had asked me to write last time. I handed it to her in his office at the end of the third class. Mr. Wu took a quick look at it, gave me a few more words of advice, and sent me back to class. I took the opportunity to ask if I could change seats, using the excuse that I didn't want to affect Wu Jia's studies. Unexpectedly, Mr. Wu refused, saying that if everyone could change seats according to their own preferences, the whole class would be in chaos. He lectured me for a while and then kicked me out of the office. I was a little depressed that I hadn't been able to change seats, but that unhappiness disappeared when the last class of the morning arrived. It was Xueqing's English class. Even though she hadn't been available for a date the past 2 days, it was still quite a pleasure to see her in class, especially with her attractive, plump body. However, it seems that because I offended her this morning, she didn't call on me to spell words on the blackboard for a long time, but this time she called on me again. Seeing my embarrassed expression, I slowly went up to the blackboard to spell the words, while Wu Jia showed a gloating smile. Because of all the recent events, my academic performance was not as good as before, and I hadn't reviewed the words that Xueqing taught in class, so how could I spell them? In the end, I got only 3 words right out of 20. Xueqing was so angry that she took out a feather duster and was about to spank my palm again. I had her in my hands, and she actually dared to do this to me today, so of course I was angry and resolutely refused to hold out my hand. All the students in the classroom, including Wu Jia, were shocked. They didn't seem to expect me to dare to disobey Xueqing's orders. Han Xiaomei, who was sitting in the front row, looked worried and nervously at me. I was not afraid of Xueqing at all, but instead glared at her angrily. It seemed that she felt the anger in my heart, and finally Xueqing changed her mind and said to me, "Lu Feng, you dare to disobey orders, now go out and stand there until the end of my class and don't come in." It wasn't the first time I was punished to stand, and I was quite willing to accept this punishment, but I still felt uncomfortable. When it was time to go to lunch after class, Xiao and the others and I went together, and Marin said, "Brother Feng, I've noticed that you're getting more and more arrogant. You even dared to disobey the witch's orders. That's really something." I didn't feel like dealing with it, so I ate my lunch in a hurry and then planned to buy a pack of cigarettes to thank Qin Feiyang. But the school supermarket didn't sell cigarettes, so I had to go outside. Shenkai had treated me to both meals, so I saved more than 10 yuan, which should be enough to buy a pack of cheaper cigarettes. Although my family was poor and I was reluctant to spend even 10 yuan, Qin Feiyang had helped me out a lot yesterday, so I should thank him. So I went out alone to buy a pack of cigarettes. I didn't expect to see Xiao Xueqing again when I passed the bicycle shed, and she was smiling as she got into a black Passat. I knew that car it belonged to the head teacher Huang Weiqiang. I felt really bad. I put up with Xiao Xueqing not showing up for our date, and I put up with being punished by having to stand outside the classroom. I never expected to see her with Huang Weiqiang in such a flirty mood. I guessed that they were up to no good when they went out together, and I understood why Xiao Xueqing always said she was busy. It turned out that she was dating Huang Weiqiang. As I watched the Passat drive out of the school gate, I was so angry that I wanted to find out what was going on. But the car was going too fast, and it was out of the school gate in no time. I was so anxious. It so happened that Han Xiaomei had just finished eating and was going back to the classroom to rest. I immediately stopped her and asked to borrow her electric bicycle. Seeing my anxious expression, Han Xiaomei lent me the car without asking any questions, and I thanked her. I got on the car and hurriedly chased after it. Chapter 28, Escape. Fortunately, there were a lot of cars on the street, and the Passat was not driving fast, so I was barely able to follow it on the little electric car. Although I didn't have an electric car, my father did, and he bought it 2 years ago when he started working at the machinery factory, so he was no stranger to riding in Han Xiaomei's electric car. I wanted to see if Xiao Xueqing's reason for refusing to go out with me was because she was having an affair with the headmaster. The car finally stopped in front of a hotel called Shanghai International, which made me more convinced of my guess, and I couldn't help but grind my teeth in hatred. Even though I knew that Xiao Xueqing and Huang Weiqiang were only in a relationship for their mutual interests, I still couldn't calm my heart, so I secretly decided to sabotage this date. I parked the car and hid behind a stone pillar. From a distance, I saw them get out of the car and enter the hotel together, laughing and chatting. I wondered what I should do to make them cancel the date. Then I had an idea. I could call Xiao Xueqing and threaten her with the secret between her and Huang Weiqiang. That should stop the date from going ahead. I quickly pulled out my phone and called Xiao Xueqing, but she didn't answer my calls after 3 tries. I was angry and anxious, but there was nothing I could do. Just as I was at my wit's end, I saw a white Audi parked in front of the hotel. The Audi looked familiar, as if it had been driven by Xiao Xueqing last time. This gave me an inexplicable bad feeling. When the person in the Audi got out, this bad feeling immediately became reality. He was wearing a black casual suit and glasses, looking refined and handsome. Who else could it be if not Xiao Xueqing's husband? I never dreamed that Xiao Xueqing's husband would appear at the hotel entrance at this critical moment. Did he come here unintentionally, or because of work needs, or did he find out something about Xiao Xueqing and wanted to come here to catch her in the act? I think the last idea is the most likely, because at this time, his expression looked a bit desperate, his face was very ugly, as dark as a cloud, and he took out a white baseball bat from the trunk. Seeing this baseball bat really startled me. Could it be that Xiao Xueqing's husband really had discovered something and had specially prepared to rush here, with the aim of catching her in the act of adultery and teaching the adulterer, Director Huang, a good lesson? Although this has nothing to do with me, and according to common sense, the adulterer and adulteress deserve to be caught in the act by her husband. After all, Xiao Xueqing has brought me physical pleasure, and I am deeply infatuated with her body, and I have an inexplicable feeling towards her. If she really gets caught cheating in bed by her husband, not only will her marriage be over, but I'm afraid my threat will no longer be effective. What's more, Xiao Xueqing and I might be exposed, and I'll really be finished then. Thinking about this, I felt a creepy feeling in my heart. No, this must not be discovered by her husband, not only for the sake of the two of them, but also for my own sake. Without saying a word, I quickly called Xiao Xueqing again, hoping that this time he would answer the phone. It seemed that my prayers had worked. After anxiously waiting for 20 seconds, the phone finally connected, and I immediately heard Xiao Xueqing's low and impatient voice. "Lu Feng, what do you want? Are you annoying? I already told you that I'm not available these 2 days, so don't call anymore." I was worried that she was going to hang up, so before she finished speaking, I quickly said, "Teacher Xiao, your husband is downstairs at the hotel, and he's brought a baseball bat with him. It seems that he's found out about you, so you two should hide quickly." Upon hearing this, there was a 5-second silence at the other end of the line. I didn't know if she was still listening or if she had hung up already, so I quickly asked again, "Are you still there? How did you know I was at the hotel? Did you follow me?" How could you be so despicable? If you keep this up, the worst that can happen is that we'll both die, and even if it means going down with you, I'll do it. Xueqing was extremely agitated at the other end of the line, and I could even hear her teeth grinding. If this were any other occasion, I would have lost my temper and argued with her, but the situation was really critical. I had no heart to argue with her and said anxiously, "I'm not lying to you. I saw your husband at your house last time, and he was driving a white Audi, the same car you drove last time. If you don't hide, you're finished." There was another moment of silence at the other end of the line. Eventually, Xueqing seemed to believe what I said and said, "I'll believe you this once. If you dare lie to me, you're dead." She hung up the phone, and I let out a sigh of relief. As long as Xueqing got this message, I believed she would not be caught by her husband. At the same time, I dared not let my guard down. As long as her husband did not leave the hotel, there was still a possibility of exposure. While I was on the phone just now, her husband had already entered the hotel. I was still a little worried, and wanted to follow him in to see if he would find out anything, but I was afraid of being discovered. In the end, I didn't have the courage to follow him in, so I rode my electric bicycle back to school. My heart was pounding the whole way, and I comforted myself by thinking that Xueqing wouldn't be caught so easily. It wasn't until I sat back in my seat that the tension eased a little. I suddenly realized that Xueqing had never seen me before, so why was I so afraid of being discovered when I was at the hotel? I thought it was probably just my guilty conscience. While I was thinking all kinds of nonsense, the lunch break class was over. I didn't really pay attention to the afternoon class, and what concerned me most was whether Xueqing was out of danger. But there was no class with her in the afternoon, so I sent 2 text messages asking about the situation, but there was no reply. It wasn't until evening study hall that I saw her. Xueqing was on duty with an expressionless face, as if nothing had happened at noon, and she treated everyone with a cold attitude. I thought to myself, seeing that she still had the heart to teach here, nothing much should have happened, right? Just as I was pondering, Xueqing got up and coldly said, "Lu Feng, come with me." Seeing Xueqing's attitude, everyone in the classroom thought that Xueqing was going to scold me. My classmate Wu Jiejie even looked at me with a smirk, a look of schadenfreude. I guessed what was going on, but I ignored them. I followed Xueqing to the office. There were only a few teachers on duty for evening study, 1 for each class at most, and they were all supervising their own classes at this time, so the office was empty. She sat down in her seat and looked at me with a strange expression. I didn't know what she wanted to do, so I just stood in front of her without saying a word. "Tell me, what happened at lunch?" Finally, Xueqing spoke. I had nothing to hide, so I told her that I saw her get into the car of the head of the teaching department at lunch and wanted to follow to see what was going on, but I didn't expect to meet her husband outside the hotel. After I explained, I asked what happened. My husband didn't catch us, and I had a fight with my husband in the afternoon. It turned out that his colleague suspected because he saw me go into the hotel with Huang Weiqiang. I thought Xueqing would at most tell me if she had been caught, but I didn't expect her to explain about her husband. She continued, "The last time you went to my house, you left behind a white sock, which made him suspicious. But it's been taken care of, so don't worry." White sock? I was slightly shocked to hear this. The last time I left Xueqing's house, I did realize that I was missing a white sock when I got home, but I didn't think much of it. I never imagined that her husband would find it and become suspicious. "How did you explain it?" I asked anxiously. "Don't worry about it, it's been resolved," Xueqing said calmly, not at all like someone who had just experienced a crisis of being caught cheating. However, the thing that surprised me the most was the next sentence she said. "I have to thank you for this. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid my family and career would really be over." Xueqing looked at me and said. I never dreamed that Xueqing would thank me. I felt very embarrassed. After all, I only tipped her off because it was actually for my own sake. I said it was nothing, that I had just happened to be there when it happened. At this, she gave me a slight smile. Xueqing was already very good looking, but she had always treated me coldly. Even when we were together, I had never seen her smile much. This was the second time she had smiled at me since the woods, and it really made me a little distracted. "I know you really want to have sex with me. How about this, after night study, let's go to a hotel room and get it over with." What's even more unexpected is that she then said this. Hearing this, I was overwhelmed with emotion and quickly nodded in agreement. After returning to the classroom, I lost interest in studying and stayed until night study. I was the first to rush out of the classroom. When we were in the office, Xueqing and I had already discussed it. I was to wait for her at the school gate and she would drive me to the hotel. I was very excited and rushed to the school gate. After waiting for about 15 minutes, when the day students had almost finished walking, I saw Xueqing drive out in her Audi. She drove up to me, opened the window and stuck her head out, saying, "Get in the car." Chapter 29, The Elevator. I knew that Miss Xiao was afraid of being discovered by students or teachers at school, but at that time, the day students had already left, and there were almost no people at the school gate. But I still did as she said, quickly opened the car door and got into the back seat. Sitting in the car, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Who would have thought that during the day, this car still belonged to Xueqing's husband, and at night, I could actually be in her car. Since we didn't have much to say, the atmosphere in the car was silent and awkward. I felt I should say something to break the silence, so I asked, "It's the end of the evening study session, won't your husband suspect something if you don't go home?" I had had a fight with her, so she couldn't control me. Xueqing's tone was very calm, and she asked indifferently, "What, do you want me to go home?" "Fine, you can get off here." She said she was going to stop the car, and I was startled. I quickly said, No, I was just asking casually." In the rearview mirror, I saw a nice curve form at the corner of her mouth, but the smile carried a hint of mockery. I guessed she was despising me again, but at this point I didn't care. As long as Xueqing was willing to do it with me, I would be happy even if she wished me dead in a car crash. We arrived at the hotel where we had stayed the last time. Xueqing parked the car, got out, and deliberately kept a distance from me. She said to me, "Wait a minute, you go in first and wait for me upstairs." I knew she was embarrassed to be seen with a minor. I was a little unhappy. We were both out, and she was still pretending. I said, "I'll go in with you." "Fine, you can come with me, but when we check into the hotel later, you pay." Who knew that Xueqing would sneer and suddenly say this, leaving me speechless? My weekly living expenses were only 120 yuan, and that wasn't even enough to pay for a hotel room. I was really a bit flustered when she told me to pay for the hotel room. I forgot to bring any money. I stammered and explained. "Lu Feng, don't hide it, I know your family's situation." Xueqing sneered and said, "If you don't have money, just shut up and do what I say." "You're a grown man, going out with a woman to a hotel room and making her pay. Are you ashamed of yourself?" These words made me blush, and I hung my head, unable to say a word in reply. "What are you still doing here? Get up there!" Xueqing snapped. I felt particularly uncomfortable. I had come out with Xueqing to get a hotel room, and I had to suffer such insults from her. I wanted to turn around and leave right now, but I didn't want to part with Xueqing's body. I cursed myself inwardly. "Lu Feng, you really are cheap. This woman has insulted you like this, and you're still shamelessly not leaving. Do you have any shame?" This voice made me regain a little balance. I looked at her angrily, without saying anything else, and quickly entered the hotel. The receptionist was watching a movie with melon seeds and didn't notice me at all. I quickened my pace and entered the elevator, but didn't go upstairs. I didn't know the room number Xueqing had booked, so I had to wait for her in the elevator. After a while, Xueqing came in. She didn't show much emotion when she saw me, just said indifferently, "Room 805. Let's go up." I let out a little gasp, pressed 8, and stood against the wall. Xueqing stood in front of me. There was a full-length mirror on one side of the elevator. She subconsciously tidied her hair and applied lip balm to her sexy red lips. Looking at her seductive, voluptuous body like a water snake in the round, perky buttocks wrapped up in her dress, and smelling the scent of her body, I couldn't help it anymore. My body reacted on its own, and I wrapped my arms around her waist from behind. "What are you doing? Don't, wait until we get to the room." Xueqing struggled hard, but it was useless. I bound her hands, and one of my hands became restless, touching the silky smooth skin, and I was filled with excitement. Xueqing reacted to my actions, and her struggle became less intense. Instead, she began to breathe softly and gently. Having taken advantage of Xueqing a few times, I was quite familiar with her body. In no time at all, her pretty face had turned red, and she raised her swan-like, snow-white neck, biting her sexy red lips, looking as if she was trying her best not to make a sound. No, this is the elevator, people will see us." Her voice trembled a little as she spoke, as if she could no longer hold back. Just then, there was a ding and the elevator door opened. An obese middle-aged man in a suit stood at the elevator entrance, preparing to come in. When he saw me tightly embracing Xueqing and taking advantage of her recklessly, his small eyes went straight, his gaze focused on the view of Xueqing's skirt, and he couldn't help but laugh. We were also startled, and we reflexively parted. Xueqing blushed, quickly straightened her clothes, and head down, she fled out of the elevator in a dismal manner. The fat middle-aged man also followed her as she left, his gaze trailing after her. For some reason, I shamefully reacted when I saw the fat middle-aged man's lecherous gaze. I didn't dare to linger, and after awkwardly looking at him, I quickly got out of the elevator and chased after Xueqing. I followed Xueqing into room 805. As soon as the lights were turned on, Xueqing turned around and gave me a slap in the face, coldly scolding me, "You despicable guy, are you a pervert?" Xueqing's slap was very hard, and I immediately felt my face swell up on one side. But I didn't dare to argue back. After all, I was the one who had done something wrong, causing her to be humiliated in public. I kept my head down and didn't say a word, just like a student who has done something wrong. In fact, that was exactly what had happened, but at this moment, our relationship was extremely special. Seeing that I was silent, Xueqing said coldly, "Don't dawdle, go take a shower. The sooner you do it, the sooner it'll be over. I don't want to have anything to do with disgusting people like you anymore." Hearing her say this, I felt very sad. During the course of our several dates, I not only became deeply infatuated with teacher Xiao's body, somehow I also developed an inexplicable feeling for her. Just now outside the hotel, Xueqing insulted me once, and now she's saying this. I could tell that she really hated me and wanted to end this abnormal relationship of coercion and being coerced. I sighed, walked silently into the bathroom, and already decided in my heart to end this relationship with Xueqing tonight. I took a long shower for half an hour, but in the end I still couldn't let go, and I hoped that time would pass slowly. When I came out, I saw Xueqing change into a pink silk robe. The robe tightly wrapped her perfect and delicate figure, highlighting her delicate and smooth skin, which looked extremely attractive. Two smooth and pink legs extended from under the hem of the robe, and her feet were like perfectly carved jade, with red nail polish on her toes, which made me daydream for a moment. "Why did you take such a long time in the shower, acting like a woman?" Xueqing gave me a glance, showing a dissatisfied expression, and then, without waiting for me to reply, she twisted her water snake waist and went into the bathroom. I sat on the soft Simmons bed, and the depression in my heart was replaced by the passion that was about to come. Then I heard the sound of splashing water, the sound of Xueqing taking a shower. I even imagined the water from the shower head pouring down, running over Xueqing's long, snow-white neck, her beautiful collarbone, along the fullness and elasticity of her breasts, a few running through the deep ravine, to the flat and delicate belly, and finally converging on the wonderful sight of the mysterious jungle. This made me have a strong reaction all of a sudden, and I couldn't wait any longer. But just then, a phone ringing interrupted my fantasy. It was Xueqing's mobile phone thrown on the bed. I frowned slightly, feeling naturally not very good about being interrupted in my fantasy, but quite curious about who was calling her. Could it be the head teacher Huang Weiqiang again? As soon as I thought of this, my heart became nervous, and I hurriedly went over and picked up the phone to take a look. The caller ID didn't say Huang Weiqiang, but the name on it shocked me. It actually said husband on it, which was undoubtedly Xueqing's husband. Chapter 30, Text Message. Seeing that it was Xueqing's husband calling, I was not calm. What was Xueqing's husband calling at this time? Did she not go back, which caused the other party to suspect again? Or was it that her husband wanted her to go home and made a special phone call? Regardless of the result, I was not willing to accept it. Fortunately, the phone did not ring loudly and was not heard by Xueqing, who was taking a bath in the bathroom. I held the phone in my hand, afraid to answer or hang up. After waiting for 30 seconds, the person on the other end hung up. I immediately deleted the missed call. Unexpectedly, as soon as I deleted it, her husband sent another text message, "Xueqing, don't be angry, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have doubted you. If you come back, I will kneel down and scrub the washing board for you to apologize." It was clear that Xueqing's husband was sincerely apologizing, but he never imagined that his wife was not only having an affair with the school's director of instruction, but also having an affair with her student in a hotel room. I suddenly felt some sympathy for her husband. I think if he found out about this, Xueqing's husband would probably even want to kill someone. Of course, sympathy aside, I had no intention of helping him, because I was also involved. On second thought, it may not be a bad thing to end this relationship with Xueqing early, at least I won't have to worry every day about her husband finding out. Then, I deleted the text message as well, so that Xueqing wouldn't run away before we could get down to business, as she had done the last time. After a while, Xueqing came out of the bathroom wearing a bathrobe. Her hair was wet, her skin glistened with water droplets, and she was still steaming hot. She looked like a water lily just emerging from the water. Her delicate face, full breasts, flat stomach, and snow-white smooth legs under the bathrobe aroused every nerve in my body. I couldn't hold back any longer, and wanted to rush up and hug her, but she coldly stopped me. Wait until I put on a facial mask. Although I couldn't hold back any longer, I still had to obediently listen to her. I sat down by the bed, but my strong reaction had already raised an umbrella. Xueqing had been applying a facial mask for 100 years, and she asked me while she was doing so, "Did someone just call me?" "No," I hurriedly said. Xueqing gave me a blank look, picked up her phone and looked at it for a moment. There really were no missed calls, so she continued to apply the facial mask without any concern. I waited until she finished putting on the mask before she said to me, "Come on, hurry up." Hearing this, I could no longer hold back the evil fire in my heart, and I pounced on her like a hungry wolf. I used both hands to take advantage of her. After being tormented for a while, Xueqing couldn't stand it anymore. Her gasping began to sound, and she began to respond actively. The two of us were entwined together, like two balls of fire, as if we were going to burn the room down. Just as I couldn't control myself and wanted to get down to business, I didn't expect Xueqing's phone to ring again. She didn't pay any attention at first because she was too overwhelmed by me and responded to me with great enthusiasm. But the phone kept ringing, which made her feel annoyed. She slightly frowned, got up to stop me from taking the final step and picked up the phone. When she picked up the phone, I saw her face change significantly. "What do you want?" I heard Xueqing say coldly. I don't know what was said on the other end of the line, but from what Xueqing said next, I understood that it was probably her husband. "You don't think I'm cheating on you, do you? Well, I can't let you down, so I'll cheat on you right now and make your wish come true." Xueqing continued. She acted as if she was really an aggrieved young wife angrily yelling at her husband. Who would have thought that at that moment Xueqing was actually doing this, but she could act as if she had suffered endless grievances. I have to admire Xueqing's ability to adapt to changing situations. I don't care what she and her husband talked about afterwards, but the last sentence made my heart fall to the bottom of the pit. "Are you annoying?" "I know, I'll be right back." After saying this, Xueqing hung up the phone, but I seemed to see a hint of a smile on the corner of her mouth as she did so. This smile was different from the two smiles I had seen before. She smiled very gently and kindly, full of deep affection. An illusion arose in my heart. Could it be that Xueqing still loved her husband? Then why did she have to cheat on him with the head teacher, risking the breakdown of her marriage and the destruction of her reputation in order to rise up the ranks? Was it worth it? Before I could think much more, I saw her coldly staring at me and said without emotion, "Lu Feng, tell me, when I was taking a shower just now, did my husband call me?" Hearing her say this, I knew in my heart that her husband had probably inadvertently revealed this on the phone. I couldn't argue, so I just nodded silently. "Did he also send a text message?" Xueqing pursued. I answered honestly. "Why did you touch my phone? Who gave you permission to do that?" Xueqing shouted at me, "Lu Feng, you piece of trash, you despicable scumbag, do you have any shame?" I didn't expect Xueqing to be so emotional, and to be so angry about me deleting the phone call and text message. "I just wanted you to stay with me tonight." I lowered my head, my face red, and I didn't dare to look her in the eye. Xueqing didn't say anything else, but quickly changed her clothes, gave me a fierce glare, and cursed, "What a slut." After cursing, she didn't wait for my reaction, and quickly left the door open. I was left alone in the room again, and I felt very bad. It was a similar situation last time, but the person who called Xueqing was the dean of students, and this time it was her husband. I sat in the hotel for a while, waiting for my mood to ease a little, and then I tidied my clothes and left the hotel. I climbed over the wall back to the school, went into the dormitory and fell asleep. What happened today made it impossible for me to sleep for a long time. I thought that after helping Xueqing to avoid her husband catching her in the act of cheating, she would be able to treat me a little better, and the words of thanks she said to me really made me feel a little flattered. But then everything that happened afterwards made me realize that I was dead wrong. I was awakened by her scolding, and I dared not hope that she would treat me better. I just hoped that her husband would not investigate this matter and that this relationship would end safely. The next morning, Chen Kai and the others asked me where I had been last night. I gave an excuse and said perfunctorily that I had gone to an internet cafe for 2 hours. Shin Kai and the others complained about why I didn't call them when I went, and then they said that they would go to the internet cafe together tonight and they would take me to play the game Black Ruler. This time I didn't refuse, I said yes. Today in class I seemed listless, and even when I got to Xueqing's class, I was no longer as excited as before. My classmate Wu Jejia still had the same dead look on her face, not saying a word to me, and from time to time she gave me a sour look. On the contrary, Su Wen in the front row, I don't know if it was because I scared him last time or because he knew about my relationship with Qin Fei Yang, he actually took the initiative to apologize to me at the end of class, and even gave me a cigarette to smoke. Although we are classmates, what he did last time was really extreme. If he hadn't told on me, the homeroom teacher wouldn't have called my father to school. I refused the cigarette he offered me, and ignored his apology. I just said calmly, Su Wen, I won't trouble you for nothing in the future, and you should leave me alone. We should just mind our own business. Although he didn't become friends with me, I could tell he was still quite happy to hear those words. He kept nodding his head and said yes. During lunch break, I went outside the school to buy Qin Fei Yang a pack of cigarettes. Although the cigarettes only cost a dozen yuan, they represented my goodwill. In the afternoon, during recess, I took the time to give them to him and thank him again. Qin Fei Yang probably didn't expect me to give him cigarettes either, and he was taken aback. He said that I had helped him a lot, and that it was no big deal for him to help me deal with Li Weiqiao, so there was no need to be so polite. I insisted on holding the cigarettes in my hand, and he didn't refuse again, smiling and accepting them. Then he took out half a pack of cigarettes and handed me one. We chatted for a while, and after finishing the cigarettes, we returned to our own classroom. Unexpectedly, as soon as I sat down, I saw someone coming from outside the classroom. It seemed to be a student from another class, and he looked familiar. He was about 1.8 meters tall, had short hair, and shouted haughtily, "Who is Lu Feng?" His shout attracted the attention of everyone in the classroom. They looked at him in surprise, and all eyes were focused on me. I was also quite puzzled. I didn't know this guy, I didn't know what he wanted with me, and his tone of voice made me feel uncomfortable. What? I walked over and asked. He looked me up and down, a slight sneer at the corner of his mouth, and said, "Our boss wants to see you." "Who's your boss?" I asked, frowning. "The boss of class 15, Wang Jun." The tall boy grinned smugly.